Overheard my boyfriend humiliating me behind my back. I smiled. And made him regret it. But then, he did something I never expected. Overheard my boyfriend humiliating me behind my back. I smiled, and made him regret it. But then, he did something I never expect. I stood in the kitchen, slicing pie for the man who just said, "She's convenient, her dad's money keeps me comfortable." And I smiled like nothing was wrong. Nearly 2 years ago, at the most peculiar time, I met Noah. At Trader Joe's, I was picking up some goods when I overheard the manager berating a man for parking in the wrong area or something. The manager was being like a complete jerk about it, pointing and getting red-faced in front of everyone. Noah, the man, simply stood there looking ashamed. To be honest, I have no idea what possessed me, but I intervened and said something like, "Maybe we should all just take a breather, the parking signs are confusing." The manager gave me a fierce look but moved away. As we were checking out, Noah asked if he could buy me coffee as a thank you because he seemed so relieved. We clicked right away. He was tall, personable, and had a crooked smile that made me feel really good. He texted me good morning every day, listened to me when I spoke, or at least appeared to, and recalled small details. I was falling hard by the third date. My dad in particular was always very supportive of me. After I graduated from college and was figuring out my work, they helped me find an apartment. Dad also assisted me with some other bills and my car payment. They maintained that they wanted to assist me in getting back on my feet, but I always felt a little bad about it. About 8 months into our relationship, Noah moved in with me. Although it appeared quick, it made sense because his roommate situation had deteriorated. My folks were cautiously hopeful. He immediately won Mom over. Although it took him longer, Dad finally started to warm up to Noah. To receive Dad's final blessing, they even played golf together a couple of times. It was all so good, until it wasn't. Noah's parents began visiting more frequently about 6 months ago. They would visit for Sunday brunch or dinner because they lived about an hour away. Emma, his mother, was constantly praising my place, my cooking, or anything else. Arthur, his father, was more reserved but still courteous. I suppose they were all right, but there was always something strange about them, as if they were acting instead of being themselves. "You have such a warm atmosphere here. It's been so long since we felt like a family." Emma broke down in tears as she surveyed my living room during one of these visits, and Arthur nodded in agreement, adding that their Noah is simply adorable and they hope we stay together for a very long time. I grinned and thanked them, but it felt strangely intense. In hindsight, I missed some of the signs. Noah would joke about how he'd hit the lottery with me or make small remarks about my dad's generosity. When we received something new for the flat, he would immediately text his folks. How, despite his frequent discussion of his ambitious aspirations, he never appeared to be actively seeking out better employment prospects. I became aware of trends. Noah would either be silent or shift the conversation whenever the subject of money or careers came up while we were with my parents. Noah would get really engaged and start asking specific questions whenever my dad talked about his business. Later, when we were by ourselves, he would make small jabs about my dad being old money or traditional. He mumbled something about his ex having beauty but not stability after seeing a picture of her on Instagram one evening when we were browsing through it together. He simply kissed my forehead and stated, "I am the whole package," when I inquired what he meant. I recall feeling strange about it. I began to listen more intently. He would frequently be on his phone, grinning at texts, but he would put it face down if I were close. I once caught a peek of him emailing someone about how his financial situation was improving. He said it was just his friend discussing a new job when I questioned him. I wanted to think he was real. On 3 separate occasions, I heard brief phone conversations with his mother in which he stated things like, "It's comfortable," or "I'm just holding on for now." Every time he saw me, he would abruptly change the subject and start chatting loudly about plans for the weekend or what to eat for dinner. I began recording sporadic talks while he was on the phone after the 3rd time. Something seemed strange, and I needed to know if I was being overly suspicious or if my gut was correct. I realize it sounds really intrusive. I mostly didn't catch anything. Simply having casual discussions with pals about plans or sports. The meal at his parents' residence followed. They invited us to join them for this elegant dinner, which included steaks, salads, champagne, and more. Emma repeatedly touched my arm and expressed their happiness that Noah had found someone so encouraging. Since they had already met multiple times, it felt strange when Arthur inquired about my dad's business. I volunteered to cut Emma's baked pie after supper. Leaving my phone on the dining room table, I headed to the kitchen. However, I began recording the voice memo before I left. I simply had to know. A partial wall divided the dining room from the kitchen, so I could hear them but they couldn't see me. As I was cutting the pie, I heard Noah chuckle, the same laugh he makes when he wants to win someone over. Even though his voice grew softer, I could still hear everything he said. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable while I figure things out. On the knife, my hands froze. I may have briefly stopped breathing. He said, I'll stick around long enough to squeeze what I can out of her, then I'll find someone worth showing off. I heard Arthur snort, as if he found it funny. Then came the quieter but unmistakable words of Emma. Just don't get her pregnant. Noah once more. God, no. Can you imagine being tied to her family forever? Her dad is an arrogant old goat. If it wasn't for the money, I wouldn't even say hello to him. My entire body was on fire as I stood there with the knife. I wanted to hurl something, yell, or leave and never return. However, I continued to carve the pie instead. Slice by slice. Triangles that are perfect. I can't even recall considering it. I just completed it. Grinning, I returned to the dining room with dishes in hand. After putting the pie down and giving them each a slice, I took a seat in my chair. Noah kissed my cheek and wrapped his arm around me. I didn't recoil. I simply asked Emma about her garden while grinning. The remainder of the night is a haze. I recall kissing Noah in the vehicle on the way home, helping to clean up, and laughing at their jokes. Before we departed, I recall taking my phone off the table. He kicked off his shoes and flopped on the couch as if nothing had happened as I opened the door to our apartment, the one my parents were paying for. Because it was to him? That evening, I refrained from confronting him. Or the following day. I simply observed him. I observed how, when he believed I wasn't looking, he would check my dad's social media sites. I noticed that anytime our fridge was running low, he would recommend that we go see my parents. I noticed that when my dad was around, he would bring up his college loans. A week went by. I didn't get much sleep. I kept playing the recording again because I thought I might have misheard or misinterpreted it. However, no. His words were very clear. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. I'll find someone worth showing off. I stopped eating a lot. Ceased speaking unless absolutely necessary. I would shut myself in the restroom and simply sit on the floor, attempting to think of something to do. Noah was aware that something was wrong, but he appeared irritated rather than worried. He kept asking if I was being dramatic or if I was on my period. At last, Mom made the breakthrough. One afternoon when Noah was out with friends, she dropped by without warning, took one look at me, and set me down at the kitchen table. She looked into my eyes and said, "What's going on with you and Noah? Is he behaving normally?" I wasn't in tears. I had stopped sobbing. All I felt was emptiness. I said, "Do you want to hear it?" "Yes," she replied. "Of course, just don't interrupt, okay?" I took out my phone, launched the voice memo app, and pressed the play button. Noah's voice filled the kitchen as we sat in stillness. She's convenient. Her dad's money keeps me comfortable. Mom's expression turned blank. And when the recording got to arrogant old goat, she started to shake. She remained silent for what seemed like an eternity after it was over. Then she got up, went to the corridor, and picked up her coat. "Don't let him come back here tonight," she replied. I said, "Where are you going?" "To your father." "Wait here." After she went, my phone buzzed with a text from Noah, and I sat by myself in the kitchen, joining the boys for drinks. "BB returned late. Avoid waiting up." I didn't answer. Rather, I launched my laptop and began compiling a list. The initial update: I am so grateful to all of you SM for your encouraging remarks on my previous post. I didn't think this would blow out the way it did. Since some of you requested updates, this is what transpired following the arrival of my parents. My dad has never been so silent in my life. He generally fills up the gaps by asking questions, making small conversation, or telling dad jokes, but that night when he came through my door, he simply nodded. With her hand on his back as if to steady him, Mom was close behind him. "I had something he needed to hear," Mom said. As I took out my phone once more, I felt my stomach turn. There was a part of me that wanted to back off, say anything, and act like nothing was wrong. Because when that recording was played, everything would be different forever. Still, I pressed play. It was to watch my dad hear Noah's voice. I'm not even sure how to explain it. His face didn't change at all at first. While Noah laughed about how convenient I was, he simply gazed at my phone on the table. Something flickered in his eyes when Noah dubbed him a cocky old goat. I thought Dad might blow up, but he didn't. After the recording was over, he sat there for a while. Then he grabbed my hand from across the table. He wanted to know if I was all right, not what I was going to do or how this occurred. To tell the truth, I didn't anticipate that inquiry. I hadn't given much thought to whether I was okay because I had been so preoccupied with the betrayal and my next course of action. And the response was no. I wasn't. That's when I started crying. I'm crying a lot. For the first time since listening to the tape. Dad just let me cry as he squeezed my hand. Mom's answer to everything is tea, which she made. Dad inquired about the recording's date of origin once I had finally calmed down. I informed him that a week had passed. As if that made sense, he nodded. Then he inquired as to Noah's current location. I looked at my phone. He sent 3 more texts. Getting a second chance. Hello, Mike says. Babe, don't wait up. So typical, so unaware. I informed Dad Noah that he would not return for hours since he was out drinking with buddies. At that point, Dad's attitude shifted. He inquired if I had my laptop after he straightened up in his chair. I picked it up off the couch, where I had left my to-do list open. He gave it a quick look and grinned a little. It turns out that our thoughts were similar. For the next 2 hours, we worked on our plan. Specific actions. Not only irate responses. Dad was meticulous, using his phone's notes app to create his own list. It was strange. Instead of the anger I had anticipated, I experienced a concentrated, composed approach to problem solving that was strangely more passionate than any yelling. The apartment is the first item on the list. Dad was paying the rent and co-signed the contract. At my table, he made a call to the property management firm. He clarified that he had to sign a new lease in my name alone and end the existing one. Dad interrupted the leasing agent as she attempted to clarify that there would be costs and paperwork. He assured her, I'll pay whatever fees are necessary. I need this done immediately. He suggested that if it would help expedite things, he could visit the office first thing tomorrow morning when she hesitated. All of a sudden, she was a lot more understanding. The automobile comes next. My automobile, which Dad helped buy for, had been driven by Noah. Dad called again, this time to our insurance representative. He instantly withdrew Noah from my policy. After that, he went into his Progressive app and modified the payment details to originate from my account rather than his. He clarified that although he would still assist me with the expense, the account had to be entirely in my name. Mom assisted me in compiling a list of everything that belonged to Noah in the flat while Dad worked on the financial matters. There wasn't much. Hygiene, his gaming gear, and a few clothes. I owned most of the cookware and furniture, or we had purchased it together with funds from my parents. I had another memory. Catalina, Noah's sister, was employed by my dad's business. About 6 months prior, she had been employed, immediately following Noah's casual statement to my dad that his sister was seeking a new opportunity. As a favor to me, Dad had interviewed her and offered her a job. I was hesitant to mention it. Somehow, it felt petty. On my laptop, however, Mom saw me typing and erasing something. Dad's face hardened when I eventually informed them about Catalina. Once more, he picked up his phone. Dad sent an email to HR requesting them to evaluate Catalina's job as part of an impending restructuring, but he didn't terminate her right away because he's not that sort of person. He made it apparent that although she shouldn't be let go without reason, if budget cuts were necessary, her job should be viewed as non-essential. When I put it like this, it seems heartless, but the truth is that Catalina had been relying on her relationship with Dad and me. She was at best mediocre at her job, frequently arrived late, and took long lunches. Noah was the only reason she hadn't already been placed on a performance plan. We proceeded to the final topic, the confrontation, at around midnight. Mom recommended that we wait until the morning, but Dad wanted to call Noah's parents at that time. I concurred. We all needed to be calm for that discussion, and I was tired. Dad insisted on staying the night even though he grudgingly agreed. Dad assisted me in changing the locks while Mom went home to fetch their overnight luggage. Fortunately, we only needed to reset the code using the apartment app because our building had those electronic keypad locks. As we erased Noah's access, I felt lighter. That night, I gave my parents the bedroom by sleeping on the couch. Noah and I had shared a bed, but I didn't want to sleep in it. My phone began to explode with texts at around 3 in the morning. The dark code isn't functioning. What the fuck, Amelia? Are you serious now? It's chilly, let me in. Amelia, pick up the phone. I placed my phone on the coffee table, face down, and put it on mute. I slept soundly for the first time in a week. Dad prepared pancakes in the morning as if it were any other Saturday. We spoke about the weather and checked our phones while eating at the kitchen table. It seemed unreal, like if we were pretending to be normal. By 5 in the morning, Noah had finally stopped texting. I assumed he had crashed at a friend's house. Dad decided it was time to call Noah's parents at around 10 o'clock. My stomach knotted up once more. Mom gave me a shoulder squeeze and assured me that I had done nothing wrong. It wasn't necessary for me to feel guilty. Dad prepared a FaceTime call on his phone. 3 rings later, Emma's face came into view. She initially appeared perplexed, but when she realized who we were, she forced a cheerful smile. Arthur was reading a newspaper in the background, as I could see. Emma's greeting was upbeat, until she noticed our faces. Her smile wavered as she summoned Arthur over. He frowned a little as he joined her on television. Dad didn't waste time making small talk. He just played the recording after asking if they wanted to hear anything fascinating. It was another to see their faces alter as they heard their own voices. Emma quickly put her palm to her mouth. Arthur scowled more deeply. The fact that Noah had been caught saying it did not appear to startle either of them. Emma started making excuses as soon as the recording was over. It was just talk, she argued. Noah didn't mean any of it. They were just joking around. Arthur made an effort to appear serious and disillusioned, as though this was also new to him. Dad interrupted them after they had been babbling for around 30 seconds. He explained everything in detail. They were taking Noah out of the flat lease. My car was taken away from him. The end of all financial assistance was imminent. The corporation was evaluating Catalina's job. Emma's expression fell flat. With sad eyes, she turned to me and begged me to change my mind. Didn't you know how much Noah loved you? Weren't you planning a future together? Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. I simply stared back at her, the woman who had laughed behind my back and grinned in front of me. Who had warned her son against getting me pregnant as it would make him a member of my family. Who, believing me unworthy of her son, had sat at my table and consumed my meal. Leaning into the frame was Mom. Then she instructed Emma to keep her mouth shut. Now nobody was grinning. Goodbye, she said. Before they could answer, Dad hung up. For a while, the 3 of us sat in silence. Then a text from Noah buzzed through Dad's phone. Where had I gone? Why was he unable to enter the apartment? What on earth was happening? Dad wrote a reply, sent it after showing it to me for approval. Amelia is an expert. The building management will pack your belongings and leave them with you. Never get in touch with her again. The following several hours were devoted to packing up Noah's belongings. Handling his belongings in light of what I now understood seemed odd. I used to sleep in his favorite hoodie while he was abroad. I got him this coffee mug for Christmas. The framed picture of us from our beach vacation last summer. Something about it felt tainted. When we heard shouts coming from outside, Mom and I had just completed taping up the final box. Noah was buzzing my apartment repeatedly from the front steps of the building when I peered out my second-floor window. His clothing was rumpled, his hair was disheveled, and he was red-faced from either booze or rage. He looked like hell. Dad went to peek out the window. Noah began shouting more loudly as soon as he saw him. Did Dad have the right to keep him locked out? He also called this place home. Dad simply shut the blinds and shook his head. After about 20 minutes, the humming ceased. Noah was sitting on the steps with his head in his hands as I looked through the blinds. There was a tiny, foolish part of me that felt sorry for him. But then I realized, she's practical. I'm comfortable because of her dad's wealth. I'll find someone to brag about. As we had agreed, Dad got Noah's boxes into his car at about 4 p.m., and drove them to the building manager's office. I stayed in the apartment with Mom, bouncing at every sound. We hardly ate the pizza we ordered for supper. I had finally come to terms with the truth of what was happening. My life has been a lie for 2 years. After 8 minutes, the buzzer sounded once more. I looked at my phone's security camera footage. Noah had returned, and his appearance had gotten worse. I chose to answer the intercom this time. He pleaded with me to release him, his speech garbled. He urged that we speak. There had been a miscommunication. He became much more irate when I took a while to reply. Did I truly have more faith in my parents than in him? Did I really act like a daddy's girl? Was I really wasting 2 years on a pointless discussion? I inhaled deeply before speaking. He had called me conveniently, and I informed him that he intended to take advantage of me before abandoning me for someone he could brag about. That he had laughed about it with his parents. A protracted hush ensued. Then his voice was entirely different. Abruptly, he sounded sober and calculating. He inquired as to whether I had been filming him. If I was aware that doing so without permission is prohibited in our state. I might face consequences if I realized that. I handed the phone to Dad. Then he made it very obvious to Noah that we would call the police if he didn't leave right now. That he was pestering me on security footage. That he needed to leave the premises in precisely 10 minutes. Noah began to yell once more, but Dad cut him off. Dad and I watched the video stream as Mom contacted building security. A few minutes later, Noah was confronted by two security officers. They eventually took him off the property after some argument and pointing. That night, we jumped at every noise. Mom stayed with me in my room, and Dad slept on the couch. I was half expecting to see Noah attempting to break in, so I kept checking the security feed. However, the night went by without incident. We completed the new lease at the property management office in the morning. The auto insurance was changed. My bank accounts were safe. I deleted Noah from my Amazon, Spotify, and Netflix accounts and changed all of my passwords. One login at a time, it was like wiping him out of my digital life. It was verified by the property management that Noah had picked up his boxes. He had been warned by the security staff not to enter the building without my express consent. My parents assisted me in moving the furniture around, as though doing so would somehow make the memory of him in that room disappear. They had to return to their own life after spending one more night there. At the entrance, Mom gave me a deep embrace. Dad kissed my forehead and encouraged me to contact them whenever I wanted, day or night, even though he seemed to be trying to say something meaningful. Then I was by myself. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I was truly alone. It seemed like the flat was too large. Too silent. I moved around, touching objects as I tried to take back my own space. Because sitting at the kitchen table felt too familiar, I ordered takeout and ate it on the living room floor. At midnight, my phone buzzed. I received a text from an unfamiliar number. "It's not over yet. You've made a grave error." I recognized Noah. I didn't answer. I just shut off my phone and blacklisted the number. I listened for footsteps that never arrived while I lay awake until morning. The most recent update. Alright, so everything blew up precisely 2 weeks ago, and to be honest, I'm tired. The unidentified numbers are the consistent texts. The voicemails. The phony accounts' Instagram messages. It's like battling a persistent ghost. I discovered 17 missed calls from various numbers between 2 in the morning when I got up this morning. And 6 in the morning. My block list now exceeds my contact list because I've blocked so many numbers. It's obvious that Noah continues to use such apps that use temporary numbers or borrow phones from pals. I initially listened to the voicemails in the hopes that he would offer an authentic apology. However, they continued to deteriorate. The first few were predictable. He apologized. It wasn't his intention. All he wanted was to win his folks over. Blah. 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 And then they were irate. How could I harm him like this? Did I realize how much he was suffering from this? On the fourth day, they became manipulative. Do you recall when you were sick with the flu and I looked after you? Do you recall our beach trip? They now alternate between being terribly depressed and menacing. The jewel of yesterday, I've destroyed his life. I caused his sister to lose her job. His parents feel let down by him. He is essentially homeless. 20 minutes later, he still can't sleep because he misses me so much. He only wants to speak. Even stranger is the fact that I still catch myself on the verge of answering. For example, I have to physically put my phone down since my thumb is hovering over the keyboard. 2 years is a long time. Sometimes I miss the person I believed him to be before learning the truth. I then play the recording once more though. I'm comfortable because of her dad's wealth. I'll find someone to brag about. Don't get her pregnant, please. Julia, a friend of mine, visited yesterday. I can't express how much I appreciate her checking in on me every couple of days. On my couch, we were browsing TikTok when my phone buzzed with a text from an unidentified number. She inquired as to what was happening, but I chose to ignore it. I hadn't yet shared the whole tale with any of our mutual acquaintances. I just mentioned how messy our breakup was with Noah. However, I chose to simply play the recording for Julia while we were sitting there. As she listened, I noticed a change in her expression. Perplexity. Next, shock. Then she displayed a chilly rage that I had never seen in her. She remained silent for a while after it was over. My stomach dropped when she told me anything. 3 days prior, Noah had texted her to inquire if she had seen me, claiming that he was concerned because I was behaving erratically and had made up a wild tale about him. She wasn't sure what was going on, so her reaction had been ambiguous. Now, however, she realized. She showed me the thread after taking out her phone. It was worse than I had anticipated. He informed her that I was experiencing a breakdown of some sort. That it was being made possible by my parents. That despite his best efforts, he was unable to get in touch with me. He went so far as to say that perhaps they ought to organize an intervention. Reading it made me literally nauseous. His goal was to deceive my pals. To make me seem insane. Julia started warning others in our circle via text right away. I checked my email while she was working on that, and I also saw messages from him that were from a few days ago. I hadn't considered checking my email because I had been so preoccupied with blocking him on my phone. Pictures of us together, screenshots of previous affectionate messages I'd written to him, and even a video from last Christmas showing me opening the necklace he got me and beaming were all attached to some of the emails. He seemed to be saying, "Look how good we were together. Look what you're throwing away," which was akin to emotional blackmail. I changed my email filters so that everything from him would go straight to the trash and erase them all. After Julia left that evening, I had a hard time falling asleep. I jumped at every sound. I repeatedly made sure my door was locked. I began going through our old texts at around 2 in the morning, searching for clues I could have missed. There were a lot of remarks on my dad's company, inquiries concerning my trust fund, and recommendations that I asked my parents for items he might like. What had caused my blindness? When I woke up the following morning, I heard someone knocking on my neighbor's door rather than mine. Noah was standing there, looking surprisingly put together in a button-down shirt I had purchased him for his birthday, when I peered through my peephole. He had a bag from my favorite bakery and coffee in his hands. Orlando, my neighbor, opened his door with a perplexed expression. Noah was something about surprising me and forgetting his key, but I couldn't hear everything. Fortunately, Orlando is naturally suspicious. "Why didn't Noah just call me?" he inquired. Noah stumbled over his desire for it to be a surprise. Orlando closed his door after saying he would first check with me. About a minute later, Orlando texted me to ask if he should let a man named Noah in. I quickly replied back, "Absolutely not," explaining that we had broken up and he wasn't welcome. Orlando gave a thumbs up in response. Through the peephole, I saw Orlando return outside and adamantly tell Noah that I didn't want to see him. Noah's expression shifted. The phony, agreeable smile vanished in an instant. His voice grew louder as he attempted to protest. Orlando, who is about 6 feet 4 inches and exercises regularly, simply crossed his arms and looked down at Noah until he gave up and walked away. I sent Orlando a thank you text message that contained roughly 15 exclamation points. "Noah gave me bad vibes," he said, adding that I should let him know if I needed anything. "Make a note to yourself to properly thank Orlando by baking him some cookies." My buzzer rang that afternoon while I was on a Zoom call for work. I looked at the video stream on my phone since the building has a camera system. Noah's mother, Emma, was waiting there with what appeared to be a gift basket. I chose to disregard it. It rang once more 5 minutes later. And once more. And once more. I finally hit the speak button and inquired about her desires. She stated she only wanted to converse, woman to woman, and her voice was sickeningly pleasant. That a horrible miscommunication had occurred. Noah was devastated. "Can't I give him an opportunity to clarify?" I informed her that the recording contained all the information I required. She changed her strategy right away. When she inquired if I understood that it was against the law in our state to record someone without their knowledge, her voice became stern. That if they so desired, they might file charges. It nearly made me chuckle. I encouraged her to give it a shot. They asked me to a supper at their residence, where the recording was made. I hadn't used it for blackmail or shared it with the public. I had merely performed it for my parents and a few close friends to justify my breakup. After 10 more minutes of her standing there, I hung up and watched her walk away from the gift basket by the door via the security stream. Later, I received an SMS from the building manager informing me that an abandoned parcel had been taken out of my doorstep. I asked them to dispose of it after thanking them. My dad called to see how I was doing that night. Although he makes an effort to be informal, I can tell he's anxious. That day, he said, Noah had arrived at his office and asked to talk to him. He created a commotion in the foyer, yelling that my dad had destroyed his life and turned me against him, before security let him out. I felt awful. My dad's business was now being impacted by this. However, he reassured me that security had taken care of it and that I shouldn't be concerned. I could still sense the strain in his voice, though. This was getting worse in ways that none of us had anticipated. I made the decision to leave the apartment on Saturday. I needed some fresh air because I had been essentially hiding inside for days. I walked to a little coffee shop about 3 blocks away, sat down at a table in the corner, and spent an hour trying to feel normal while reading. The sense that you just know someone is watching you came on while I was halfway through my cappuccino. Noah's sister Catalina was standing by the counter, staring at me as I looked up. When our gazes locked, I briefly feared she may approach and cause a commotion. Rather, she simply walked away after giving me this icy stare. I waited for another 15 minutes, but I was unable to concentrate on my book since my hands were trembling so much. I took a different path home when I eventually left, always checking my back. I still felt like I had to hide, even though it was absurd, that I was at the wrong party here. My mother was waiting for me in the foyer when I returned to my flat. She had brought dinner and groceries because she wanted to see how I was doing in person. I needed to avoid talking about Noah, so we spent the evening watching Netflix. She slept on the couch while she was there. My phone started exploding once more at midnight. More unidentified figures. Additional texts that range from angry to apologetic. I turned it off and tried to fall asleep. I was having coffee with Mom in the morning when I heard a knock on my door. It's pounding, not knocking. As if they were attempting to dismantle it. I looked through the peephole and saw Noah, looking angry and unkempt. He was calling my name, insisting that I open the door, and claiming to be aware that I was inside. As I stood there, staring at him through the peephole, my mother promptly contacted building security officers. He began kicking the door, and I jumped every time he did so. I spoke up and urged him to go since security was coming. He chuckled. In fact, I laughed. He stated that all he wanted to do was converse, that he could explain everything if I would just give him 5 minutes of my time. I inquired as to what needed to be explained. Did he say those things and then deny it? A pause occurred. Then the beating continued. He wasn't trying to hide it. All he was upset about was getting caught. A few minutes later, security showed up, 2 men who appeared to prefer being somewhere else. They were instructing Noah to go, and I could hear it. There was some shouting and scuffling in the corridor. I stood in the kitchen with my mom, listening, not talking. At last there was silence. The security staff texted me to let me know that they had taken him out of the building and contacted the police because he had grown violent. When the guards attempted to escort him out, he apparently shoved one of them. Mom and I simply exchanged glances. This was becoming risky. She recommended that I stay with them for a bit, but in some ways that felt like giving him the advantage. I called this place home. The last thing I wanted was to be chased out of it. Rather, I did what I ought to have done days ago. I submitted a restraining order application. The procedure was very simple. I have witness accounts, emails, texts, and surveillance footage of several occurrences. For added security, Dad came over the next day to install one of those Ring doorbell cameras while Mom spent another night. To be honest, I was as concerned as they were. I didn't think I knew this Noah. Or perhaps it was, and I had simply never seen it before. Silently, 4 days went by. Don't text. No phone calls, no unannounced guests. I began to feel as though it might be over and to relax a little. I did the typical, everyday things, like going to work and stopping at the grocery shop on the way home. I even went out to dinner with Julia and a few other friends, but I took care to keep our destination a secret on social media. Then, when I got home yesterday, I discovered a manila package hidden beneath my door. No name, no address. A blank envelope, that is. There was a 12-page handwritten letter from Noah inside that detailed all the things he said he loved about me, all the memories he treasured, and all the plans he had for our future. The final page was different. The penmanship became more sloppy and forceful. He wrote that he would make sure no one wanted me if he couldn't have me. Worried if they leaked, the videos he had of me would be embarrassing. That he was aware of potentially troublesome information regarding my dad's business. Reading it made me ill. The threat itself was a violation, even if there were no incriminating videos. We had never produced any. And he most likely made up or misinterpreted any information he believed he had regarding my dad's business. Nevertheless, the fact that he would use threats, I gave my father a call. Next, the police. They saw the letter as proof of a violation of the restraining order. The cop who arrived appeared disinterested, as if this were normal. However, she duly accepted my story and promised to investigate. I didn't think much would occur. I noticed a noise coming from my balcony at about 3 in the morning. The balcony of my second-floor apartment has a fire escape connection. I listened and froze. Another sound, as if the sliding door were being tested. Whispering into the phone, I dialed 911. I was instructed by the dispatcher to lock myself in the restroom until the officers arrived. With my heart thumping so hard I could feel it in my throat, I took my phone and keys and followed her instructions. I heard my sliding door open via the bathroom door. In my living room, footsteps. My name is being softly called. Noah. I don't recall much of the subsequent events. The police showed up in a flash. Shouting was heard. A crash, like someone knocking over furniture. I was so shaken that I could not stand when they knocked on the restroom door to let me know it was safe to leave. Noah had been taken into custody on charges of resisting arrest, breaking and entering, and violating the restraining order. He seemed drunk, according to one of the police, and had become aggressive when they attempted to handcuff him. My coffee table had been knocked over by him, shattering the glass top and a number of framed pictures. I stayed at my parents' place for the remainder of the night. Noah was released on bail, but he was required to wear an ankle monitor and maintain a minimum of 500 feet from me, my apartment, and my place of employment, according to a call I received in the morning. He would be imprisoned again right away if he broke these conditions. I stayed in my childhood bedroom after that conversation and eventually started crying. Not sweet tears, but ugly gasping sobs that left me feeling drained. Mom entered and simply embraced me as I sobbed. Mom asked me what I wanted to do after I had finally calmed down. Was it my desire to relocate to a new apartment? Did I wish to file more charges? I had no responses. I haven't yet. I'm writing this from my parents' guest room, which is filled with high school awards and plush toys from my early years. I feel like an angry lady who has been pushed too far and a scared little kid all at once. This afternoon, the police called to report that Noah had removed his ankle monitor in violation of the conditions of his parole. They are searching for him, but they haven't found him yet. As a precaution, they suggested that I remain somewhere he wouldn't think to check. Thus, that is the current situation. My ex-boyfriend broke into my apartment and threatened to leak fake videos of me after I found out he was using me for my dad's money, so I'm hiding in my parents' house while the police look for him. I can't get that moment in the kitchen out of my head, he laughing about how handy I was. How I presented dessert, grinned, and cut the pie as if nothing had gone wrong. I regret not confronting him right away. I regret not throwing the pie at him and leaving. I regret ever having met him. However, it's too late to make wishes now. All I have to do now is figure out what comes next. Parents accused me of an affair with my brother-in-law, threw me out, and tried to destroy my career. The shocking truth uncovered. Over the past 6 years, I have established a prosperous career as a senior programmer at a large software business. My parents insist on family values and sticking together, so even though I make more than enough money to live on my own in a wonderful apartment, I've been living with them. Although they have always been domineering, I persuaded myself that it was simply their expression of affection. The environment in our home has always been complicated. This is also where my sister Emily, 32F, and her husband James, 34M reside. 3 years ago, James obtained a job close by, and our parents were overjoyed, so they moved back. With her ideal life, marriage, and grades, Emily has always been the golden child. The comparison began in our early years and has continued ever since. I love my sister, don't get me wrong, but sharing a home has been difficult. Since I work from home the majority of the time, my folks are always watching me. They keep an eye on who I speak to on video conversations, when I start work, and when I take breaks. They have persuaded themselves that this degree of engagement in my life is both required and typical. Even though my precise schedule is shown on the refrigerator, my mother frequently interrupts me in my home office during crucial meetings, saying she forgot I was working. Michael, my 29-year-old lover, lives across the nation. He has been tremendously supportive over our 3 years of long-distance dating. But he and our relationship were never accepted by my parents. They treat James as the son they never had and compare him to him all the time. They attack every aspect of Michael, including his choice to live on the West Coast, his work as a software engineer, ironically, the same field as myself, and even his attire when we video chat. James has always been cordial, not only as his wife's sibling but also as a little sister. We had a good relationship and I valued having someone who didn't criticize me all the time. He frequently defended me during family dinners when my parents began their routine comments about my life choices, as if he understood the burden I was under. Up until 2 weeks ago, everything was in control. With solemn faces, my parents summoned me into the living room. I was managing a group of developers on a significant software update during a pivotal project phase, so the timing couldn't have been worse. On my laptop, they said, they discovered offensive text that purportedly demonstrated my attempt to conduct an affair with James. I was caught completely off guard. The messages they displayed to me were obviously fake and completely out of context. Some appeared to be completely made up, while others were excerpts from business exchanges that had been altered to appear suggestive. I attempted to explain that I'm really in love with Michael and that James is like a brother to me, so I would never do anything like that. They wouldn't look, even when I promised to show them my actual message history. They refused to pay attention. I've always envied Emily's happiness, my mother said, sobbing. And she should have anticipated this because of my rebellious nature. I was a disgrace to the family, according to my enraged father. In the midst of the largest project of my career, they gave me a 24-hour notice to leave the house, a 24-hour notice to pack up my entire existence. I called my grandparents in tears and desperation. They have always been my refuge and our family's sane voice. They immediately believed me after I showed them the actual mails and gave them all the details. They took me in, provided me with housing, and helped me get through this ordeal. In order for me to continue working, my grandfather even assisted me in setting up a makeshift home office in their spare room. My father was furious to learn that I was staying with them. When I wasn't there, he actually came to their house and yelled at them for enabling me and undermining his authority. My father became even more irate when my grandfather refused to back down and stood up for me. Declaring he would never talk to them again, he stormed away. I was devastated to see my grandfather, who is normally composed, trembling with rage following that altercation. When my father began getting in touch with my place of employment, things got worse. He made outrageous charges about my inappropriate behavior and unstable mental state in emails he sent to my manager and the Human Resources Department. He even made an attempt to persuade them that I was giving competitors access to company secrets. Fortunately, my manager has been understanding and my work history speaks for itself. However, the strain is having an adverse effect. It has been embarrassing for me to have to explain these private matters to my staff. Then my granddad unexpectedly died yesterday. The agony is intolerable. He was more than simply my grandfather. He was also my confidant, my guardian, and the one who always had faith in me. The fact that my parents did not attend the funeral only makes it worse. They had left town. Later, when I was organizing my grandfather's funeral, I discovered through my cousin that they were actually on vacation, sharing photos from a beach resort on Facebook. Every happy picture they shared made my heart ache. Taking an emergency leave of absence from his job, Michael flew in to support me during this trying period. My parents appeared out of nowhere as soon as he got to my grandparents' house. As though Michael's presence was somehow improper, my father icily inquired as to why he was there. I eventually lost my temper at that point. I asked them who they believed had taken care of all the funeral planning, who had supported Grandma during her most trying time, who had stayed up late planning the ceremony, calling family, and interacting with the funeral home while they were taking selfies on the beach. Then, in an unsettling development, my father's entire personality altered. A disturbing peace took the place of the rage in his eyes. He became oddly calm and said he wanted to forgive me for what had happened with James and let the past be the past. He said he would let me stay with Grandma, but only if he got what was rightfully his. I understood exactly what he was after, therefore I was horrified by the abrupt change in his demeanor. My grandfather had been quietly successful with his investments over the last few years. My father desired his inheritance because he had accumulated a sizable nest egg. He had the gall to come and demand money after everything they had done to us and after leaving us during the funeral. He was unaware, however, that Grandpa had anticipated this. While organizing Grandpa's study the day following the death, we discovered a note hidden in his desk drawer. All it said was, "Call Bob." Bob, who had visited him multiple times over the years, was both his lawyer and an old friend. We found out that Grandpa had left everything to me when we got in touch with him. I now owned every cent of his savings. Grandma would always have a place to live, protected from anyone who would try to take it away from her, thanks to the house being signed off to her. My father broke his cool exterior when I told him this. As he accused me of controlling Grandpa and turning him against his own son, his face flushed with anger. He went on a tirade about how he deserved his parents' money and how he had always supported them. He was the one who had left his family to pursue his greed, so it was almost comical that he was accusing me of deception. In an attempt to persuade me, my mother said things like, "Didn't you try to take away your sister's happiness? You now wish for us to suffer as well." However, I refused to back down. Grandpa had made up his mind, and I was going to respect it. I clarified that Grandpa had only recognized where their priorities lay and that Bob, his attorney, could confirm all I said. I also said that there was no conspiracy. The tension in the air was oppressive as they departed. As I watched them leave, I felt both relief and grief. Relief that Grandpa had kept us safe even when he was not around, and sadness that my connection with my parents had reached a breaking point. I'm now concentrating on reconstructing my life and caring for Grandma. Throughout it all, Michael has been amazing, offering consolation and support when I needed it most. However, I can't help but wonder whether there was anything I could have done differently to avoid all of this suffering. Reddit. I realize this post is lengthy, but I had to get everything out. Everything has become more problematic because of the inheritance situation, and I'm worried that my parents might try something extreme. I would be grateful for any guidance on legal protection. Has anyone else experienced a similar situation? How did you respond to it? Update 1. Things took a turn for the worst a few days after my last update. Apparently not satisfied with simply pestering my workplace, My father has begun reaching out to our company's customers. I learned this when a representative from one of our largest clients pulled me aside in a virtual meeting to voice concerns about upsetting emails they had received about me. These emails were kindly forwarded by them. My father was methodically attempting to damage my work relationships after he somehow managed to obtain our client list. According to the emails, I was a volatile individual who was stealing business secrets and taking advantage of older family members for financial gain. The fact that he disclosed information regarding customer projects that he shouldn't have known about is very troubling. Now, since he works for a partner company, I'm wondering if James was giving him false information. The legal department of my business has been engaged. In addition to the possible harm to my reputation, they are taking this extremely seriously because my father's activities are endangering business partnerships. My parents received a cease and desist letter from them, which only appears to have made them more angry. My parents have responded by launching a full-scale campaign against me on social media. In order to disseminate their story, they have made numerous phony personas in addition to publishing on their own ones. The stories they are narrating are getting more complex. They now assert that I have been deliberately deceiving my grandfather for years and that I somehow planned out his whole investing strategy to suit my own interests. They are unaware that I discovered something startling while looking through more of Grandpa's documents. Classic Grandpa, always the meticulous planner, had a secret compartment in his desk drawer that held a USB drive and a pile of papers. Along with comprehensive documentation of what seems to be systematic tax fraud and money laundering through my father's real estate business, the USB drive included years' worth of email correspondence between him and multiple offshore accounts. I informed Grandpa's attorney, Bob, about these results right away. He wasn't surprised, which was an odd response. Grandpa had apparently been gathering this information for years, recording each dubious business transaction and suspicious activity. Even photos of meetings with well-known dishonest business people were included in the folder. Bob clarified that Grandpa had been assembling evidence but was holding off on taking action until the perfect time. A set of emails revealing that my father had been embezzling money from his own parents' accounts for years was the most upsetting finding. Probably thinking they wouldn't notice, he had managed to get access to their financial portfolio and had started taking little amounts out. Grandpa did notice though, and instead of confronting him right away, he decided to record everything. To examine all the evidence, Bob is currently collaborating with a group of forensic accountants. According to him, we have more than enough to possibly file criminal charges in addition to defending against any legal claims my parents might make. I have mixed feelings about this. While I desire justice, I still find it difficult to imagine my own father being charged with a crime. James's eagerness to return to my parents' house is further clarified by the evidence. He and my father exchange a number of emails about business prospects that seem eerily similar to Ponzi scams. I'm beginning to question whether the entire charge that I attempted to woo James was a preemptive move, meant to discredit me should I ever find out what they were doing. In the meantime, my mother has started calling my grandmother every day, alternating between threatening her and guilt-tripping her. The most recent strategy is asserting that my father's health is suffering due to the stress of my betrayal, and that I will be held accountable if anything were to happen to him. On Bob's recommendation, my grandmother, God bless her, has begun recording these calls. We've put in new cybersecurity procedures and placed security cameras throughout the house to keep ourselves safe. Bob suggested that I freeze my credit and assisted me in securing all of my accounts. When my parents see their intimidation strategies aren't working, he fears they may attempt a financial retaliation. My job has been suffering due to the stress, but in a surprising turn of events, this has improved my standing inside the organization. My manager has been tremendously supportive after seeing the proof of my father's harassment campaign. My application for a completely remote job has been expedited, so I won't ever have to worry about working from my parents' house again. Throughout it all, Michael has been my pillar of support. In a spare room at my grandmother's house, he has assisted me in setting up a safe home office with backup systems and secured communications. We're also talking seriously about his moving to a job nearer to me, but I'm concerned that this would make my parents even more of a target. To help me cope with everything, I've started going to a therapist. She is assisting me in realizing that I am not to blame for anything and that it is acceptable to feel both love and resentment for my parents. Processing the knowledge that the folks who raised you are not who you believe them to be is a difficult process. We are currently awaiting the completion of the forensic accountant's analysis. Within a few weeks, Bob continues, we should have a good picture of the scope of my father's financial crimes. I'm getting ready for whatever might happen next. My parents, who know me well, will not tolerate this. I appreciate your prior support, Reddit. I never thought my family's drama would reveal something so significant. Has anybody else learned that their parents committed financial crimes? How did you decide whether or not to report them? I'd really appreciate some advice on this. Update 2. Emily arrived at our home this morning without warning. As I prepared myself for another altercation, I saw a broken lady instead of rage. Her normally flawless appearance was unkempt, and her eyes were red and puffy. She broke down in tears before I could even inquire what was wrong. She sobbed and told what had transpired. James had been in Chicago on a purported work trip. Emily had flown out to his hotel in order to surprise him. She believed a romantic gesture may help ease her feelings of insecurity over their relationship. Rather, she entered his room and found him with another lady. It wasn't the worst part though. Emily insisted on seeing his phone during their heated argument. The whole story of our family was broken by what she discovered. The offensive messages that had caused me to be expelled. I never made them. To escape suspicion, James had kept one of his mistress's phone numbers under my name. Using my name as a front for at least 3 different women, he had been having several encounters. The most startling aspect of all was perhaps how our parents reacted when Emily told them this information. Rather than offering their heartbroken daughter assistance, they advised her to remain silent and try to resolve the situation with James. They cared less about Emily's happiness and more about keeping up appearances. To spare the family the shame of a divorce, they even advised her to forgive him. Then Emily found something much more unsettling. She discovered emails on James's laptop that showed he and our father had been involved in more than just family affairs. Together, they had established a number of shell corporations to conceal funds from investors and taxes. James has been directing contracts to these shells at exorbitant pricing by virtue of his position at his company. Accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands were found via the money trail. Emily discovered pictures of James having meetings with strangers, all of which were stored in a secret folder called insurance. James appears to have kept records of everything, most likely for protection against any attempts to expose him. Another realization dawned on me as Emily told me these specifics. Not only was the inheritance at the center of the recent harassment of my clients and workplace, but it was also a frantic attempt to discredit me before I might learn of their financial machinations. They thought I might eventually find their digital trail because I work in technology. My sister is currently residing at Grandma's house with us. She is working with Bob to document what she has discovered and has filed for divorce. In addition to harming James, the data she presented could have disastrous consequences for our father. She discovered certain transactions that were exactly in line with the documents Grandpa had been gathering. The irony of it all? For years, James had been living beyond his means, using the proceeds of these illicit operations to fund his numerous affairs. In addition to wanting to be near James's place of employment, they moved back in with our parents since they were having financial difficulties as a result of his extravagant spending on his covert life. Through all of this, Emily has shown incredible bravery. She has already discussed her findings with the FBI, who are especially curious about the financial fraud's global components. She has been informed by the investigators that this case may be worth millions of dollars. Our parents' approach has entirely altered. They are now attempting to argue that they were duped by James and were unaware of the true situation. However, the data points to a different conclusion. Documents we have discovered reveal that our father was the mastermind behind numerous of these plots, with James acting as the front man for his business. Emily is suffering from the stress of it all. For the first time in our adult lives, we have been spending evenings discussing things, and she has begun visiting her own therapist. She has repeatedly expressed regret for not trusting me and for allowing James and our parents to influence her. Since she was just as much a victim of their manipulation as I was, I have forgiven her. Grandma has been incredible during this entire ordeal. She said Emily needed the master bedroom more than anyone else at the moment, so she gave it to her. We've resumed having dinners as a family, just the 3 of us and Michael when he comes over. It's amazing how tragedy can unite people and forge new ties from the ashes of past ones. Our cooperation is complete, and the FBI inquiry is still going on. Our parents are still working to preserve their reputation in the neighborhood and have engaged pricey attorneys, but more people are discovering the truth every day. Our father's former business partners have begun to come out with their own accounts of dubious activities. Sometimes Reddit, the reality is more amazing than you might think. I'm finally with my sister again, and we're stronger together than we were before. We're getting ready for what is probably going to be a protracted court struggle, but at least we're doing it together as a family. A true family founded on support and truth rather than deceit and manipulation. Has anyone else experienced a similar situation where revealing a single family secret revealed a whole network of dishonesty? How did you handle the fallout? Update 3. The pace of progress has exceeded everyone's expectations. The FBI intervened last Friday morning when my father and James were enjoying their customary business breakfast at their preferred high-end eatery. I will never forget the expressions on their faces as they were carried out in handcuffs, directly in front of the city's most affluent business community. In an instant, their meticulously constructed image of prosperous business people fell apart. Teams attacked their offices, our parents' home, and a number of storage units we were unaware existed as part of the coordinated raid that took place in numerous locations at once. They discovered proof of a 3-continent money laundering scheme, offshore account details, and decades worth of fake documents. Over $50 million is the preliminary estimate of the whole scam. However, that wasn't even the most fulfilling aspect. Do you recall the pictures James had saved for insurance? As it happens, he wasn't the only one who kept records. 3 of his ex-girlfriends came forward with pictures, emails, and text conversations dating back years. They had been silently constructing their own case and were all aware of one another. The finest aspect. For months they had been collaborating with the FBI. James's recent business travels were watched, and every transaction was recorded. As one might anticipate, my mother's response to the arrest was quite predictable. She made an effort to play the victim by saying she was unaware of their illicit actions. When the FBI disclosed that they had recordings of her actively engaging in money laundering through her charitable foundation, that story completely collapsed. All those lavish galas she held to raise money. Simple plots to wash up shady finances. There has been extensive media coverage. The story was carried by all local news channels and even by several national ones. Prominent businessmen and son-in-law arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The headlines continued to appear. Overnight, my father's meticulously cultivated reputation as a community leader and benefactor was destroyed. The reaction from their social circle was fast and harsh. Those who once admired them at charity functions now act as though they had never met them. Their church requested that they resign from all committees, and the country club canceled their membership. In an effort to protect their own reputations, former business partners are going out of their way to assist the authorities. James's business quickly distanced itself from the situation. He was fired right away, and they are completely assisting with the investigation. As it seems, he had also been defrauding them by inflating contracts and keeping the difference for himself. His name has become poisonous in the sector, and his professional reputation has been utterly wrecked. What the forensic accountants at the FBI discovered made me laugh aloud. Grandpa left that property in the trust in Florida. It was more than simply a dilapidated house, it held the secret to their whole scheme. Grandpa had purchased it especially to serve as evidence after learning that it was being used as a front for money laundering. He was aware that the property inquiry would reveal everything if they attempted to challenge the will. Even from the afterlife, he played them like a chess master. James and my father both agreed to plea bargains last week. The punishment is severe. My father will serve 15 years in federal prison, James will serve 12 years, and all assets related to their crimes will be forfeited. For the remainder of their lives, they will both be making restitution. Next month, my mother will be sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison for her involvement in the money laundering conspiracy. After all of this, Emily is stronger than ever. She started her own business with the settlement, which was the little money left over after asset forfeiture, once the divorce was finalized. We've never been closer since she moved into a comfortable apartment close to Grandma's house. Our parents worked very hard to sever the sister link, but it has since become indestructible. There was more karma to come. Do you recall how my parents attempted to ruin my reputation in the workplace? The board of my organization was so pleased with my handling of the matter that they elevated me to the position of Director of Security Operations. I now oversee a group of people that work to stop the exact type of scam that James and my father perpetrated. Last month, Michael relocated here, and we recently purchased a home a few blocks away from Grandma. By the way, she's doing fantastically. She used her experience to help others by starting a support group for families impacted by financial fraud. What about the valuable social standing of my mother? When I last heard from her, her old pals were openly avoiding her while she was shopping at the bargain grocery store. Her friends have made it apparent that she is no longer welcome in their group, and her expensive jewelry and clothing have all been confiscated. According to Reddit, justice isn't always served without flawless karma. Despite going through a lot, my family has emerged stronger, closer, and wiser. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. And to everyone who has experienced similar betrayals in their family, never give up. When the truth finally surfaces, it's a magnificent moment. My boyfriend won't ask for my hand, and now my dad is staging a family boycott of our wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish? Original post. I've been with my boyfriend, M25, for 3 years. We both just finished school, and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I could not be happier. I love him and he is going to be an awesome dad someday, But my BF is in a very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend did not ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said he will pay for at the restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive/possessive with his mom as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he's met my whole family and gotten to know them. He says they have always known his intentions and he never made it secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels he was done enough to announce his intentions and all of them seem to approve of him. He says that at this point he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday my mom told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mom says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my two older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mother that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I have decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother is obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what and she would not say. But from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My two sisters and my mom have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. Edit. I'm getting some comments about my boyfriend asking for my parents' blessing instead of permission, or hand. I just can't see the difference. There might be one but I don't see it. Is there a big difference? TL.dr. My boyfriend won't ask my dad for my hand in marriage and my parents is having my family boycott my wedding and threatening other consequences. Relevant comments. Oopie, thanks for the congrats and comments. I was just thinking as I read some comments here. One comment said that my parents should not have staged the boycott either way. So maybe the boycott signals something more than just my father wanting to be included in some way. I don't know. I'm now worried that the boycott and calling all my relatives signals more controlling issues that my dad has that I never noticed before. My two older sisters had no problems with their wedding because they did everything the way my dad liked. So I'm scared now that maybe my boyfriend is right that it's not just a tradition. Deleted. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. No, both he and your mother are being controlling. And they are attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé, otherwise you're setting precedent for this type of behavior interference for the rest of your marriage. OOP, this is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does. So I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptized and all that. Pastanazgul. You two need to have a discussion about how the children will be raised religion-wise now, before you have the child. Just advice from someone who learned the hard way. OOP, we did. We don't want religion in our children's lives. We decided that education is going to be the focus and they will make their own minds up about religion once they are educated adults. I grew up Catholic but I don't want that for my kids. My husband grew up somewhat Christian and he still believes in God but he doesn't want religion to be a part of our family either. We have talked about this subject to death. You're right, it's very important. I realize we might change our minds later, who knows. But my family doesn't know about this. I have a feeling after this boycott that my parents will stage another one when they find out we won't be Catholic. Update. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my two sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my two brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my SIL actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There has been no contact between me and my family, other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore, I just toss them. I don't know why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away, so it's not like I will run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true. That they would come crawling back when we had children. I am now expecting our first child, a girl. She will be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands, not request demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on the speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said that he had already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet-talk me to raising his voice at me, and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper and again begged me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions, and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told I declined every time. He lets my mom do the dirty work so he can later hide behind her and deny he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody but be a good cop also. He'll never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him our daughter would not be baptized, or Catholic at all, no offense to Catholics. I told him he was too manipulative and controlling and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, the day and for several days after that phone call I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses, and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family there's no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they're all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions even if it means I'm a bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all his sheep back into our lives. TL Doctor, nobody in my family showed up to our wedding other than one of my sisters. Everyone is banned from our lives. Relevant comments, downvoted commenter. He should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace, geez, I mean really pushing your family away for such a stupid reason. On their side and yours. OP, but that's the thing. After that one small task they would want to name my daughter, another small task, then they would ask I go have the baby near them, another small task, then have her baptized by their priest, then they pick her school, then they make life decisions for her like they tried with me and my siblings, all small tasks. OP replying to a downvoted comment that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comment. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling and abusive people, or people who condone such behavior. After years of abuse I was glad my husband decided my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting with my dad at every turn. My girlfriend keeps a spreadsheet tracking every spider in her apartment. I got her a pet tarantula, and now she's feeding them to it. Original post, my GF, M31, F27, and I have been dating for just over a year. This sounds so cliché, but she is almost perfect for me. She is really into health and fitness, has an excellent career that she worked really hard for, is great in bed, kind and intelligent. But, she lives in a basement suite which is nicely decorated and she keeps very clean. Any of you that have lived in a basement suite before know that, no matter what you do you get bugs, ants, piddlebugs, beetles and spiders. I spent a fair amount of time at her place and noticed right away that there was a spider in almost every corner. I asked her about it and she told me she doesn't kill them because they eat the other bugs. Okay. I did some light research and sure enough she was right. I found it a little creepy but not a deal breaker. Here's where things get weird. About a week and a half ago I was using her computer and noticed a spreadsheet called Babies. Curiously got the best of me and opened it. She lovingly named all of the spiders, kills the other bugs and feeds them to the spiders and keeps track of it all in a creepy rear-end spreadsheet. She keeps track of their food, their color, size, web size and some other poo-poo that I didn't really understand. I closed the spreadsheet after I realized what it was about because one felt bad for snooping and was honestly pretty disturbed. I really love her and don't want to break up, but I'm afraid that this is a sign of mental illness. Has anyone ever heard of anything like this before? Should I say something to her? Is it okay for me to ask her to stop? Is this really that big of a deal? TLDR, GF is a crazy spider lady. Edit, 1 No I'm in rear end in a top hat for snooping. Edit, we live in Australia. Relevant comments, deleted. I think the big takeaway from all this is that you should never, never, kill a spider around her. OP, no shit. Hey LOL Wolfhawk 706, you're 31 and you're unsure how a little interest in your girlfriend for over a year makes you feel. She's just logging spider data, heaven forbid she ever does anything truly bizarre, you might go into shock. OP, you don't think it's weird? At all? Pancake_ice. So long as she isn't bulking them up to have a spider fight club I think you're okay. Yes, it is weird, but I think collecting stamps is weird. I suggest asking her about it. Apologize for snooping and ask her, but don't accuse her, why she enjoys her hobby since it is freaking you out so much. Top comments. JDune02, honestly, I think this is an adorably bizarre hobby. Let her have her quirks. This is pretty goddamn harmless in the grand scheme of things. Or, freak out over this, confront her and break up in 6 weeks. Your call, dude. Edit, OP, you do realize that people collect spiders, right? It's a legit and perfectly acceptable hobby. If the spiders were in cages, you probably wouldn't think twice about this. She's basically just a free-range spider collector. Big whoop. Amber 626. I had a huntsman in my house for about 6 months. I named him Jeffrey. I was absolutely terrified of spiders since I was little, so having Jeffrey around was great. I learned that he didn't want to bother me at all. I watched him hunt. It was super interesting. Learning about your fears is an awesome way to confront them. Perhaps this is what OP's GF is doing. Either way, it's a pretty awesome way to learn about them. OP, ha 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 ha, maybe I can convince her to cage them. This is so fucked. JDU02, this is so fucked. Oh my sweet summer child. If this is blowing your mind, then I'm worried for you. Update April 3, 2015, original post. GF won't kill spiders in her apartment. Found a spreadsheet on her computer named Babies, keeping track of all of the spiders in her apartment. So I took all of your advice and tried to embrace this part of her life. It was our anniversary last week and I decided to get her a spider-themed gift. I was at the mall and one thing led to another and I ended up buying her a pet tarantula and an aquarium for it. She loved it, but I noticed the beloved spiders disappearing from around her apartment over the last few days. I asked her about it and it turns out she's been killing them and feeding them to her new tarantula. I don't know how I feel about this. First she is calling them babies, and now she is killing them. I'm just trying not to think about it and hoping she doesn't find a better BF to feed me to one day. LOL oh well. TLDR, I bought my spider-obsessed GF a pet tarantula and she is slowly feeding her smaller spiders to it. Edit, someone sent me a helpful message about spider food, care, etc. And it occurred to me that she might not be able to afford real food for it. Although she has a higher salary than me, she is aggressively trying to pay off student loans so has virtually no extra money. I'm going to buy her a gift card for the pet store tomorrow. Thanks Reddit. Edit, apparently spider food is very cheap. Still gonna get her the gift card in case it needs anything else I didn't think of. Relevant comments, deleted. That was a thoughtful gift. Good job. Big spiders eat little spiders. I wouldn't worry too much about it. She has a real pet spider now, one that you gave her. It sounds like you solved the problem of having wild spiders walking around the apartment and you made your girlfriend happy. Everybody wins. Oopie, thanks. Deleted. LOL you gifted her the spider, so it is something that is way more important to her than the so-called babies. Take this as a sign of her love for you. Oopie, I hope so. Thanks. She named it Fluffy and, unfortunately, takes it out of its cage quite often. She will hold it while we are watching movies on the couch. Lol I pretend not to be afraid of it. The son's behavior is starting to creep me out, but I'm not sure if it's actually inappropriate or just a cultural difference. Original post. Hey there, using a throwaway just in case. So I'm from the US and recently moved to Italy to be a nanny. I feel this is important because so far I have not been able to tell if I'm struggling with a cultural difference here in Italy or if I actually have reason to be weirded out. It is easy to tell that the son, Dario, is in middle school, as he is already several inches taller than me and his mom, and has maybe 30 pounds on me. When I first got here, some of the stuff that freaked me out a little I could handle and I chalked it up to being an Italy thing. This includes stuff like talking almost exclusively in a baby voice when addressing his parents, calling his parents mommy and daddy, fighting physically with his little sister over who gets to sit on mom and dad's lap multiple times throughout the day, fighting with the sister over who gets to sleep with the parents, getting extremely upset when mom or dad leaves for the day, and whining about not getting enough kisses or time laying in bed kissing with mom, and having his parents blow on chewed food in his mouth because it's too hot. Now I really don't want to be critical of this if it's normal here, you know? But in the US I seriously can't imagine a single 7th grade boy engaging in any of these behaviors, so it's really new to me. And really it hadn't affected me, so I just let it be. The problem is though that now I'm starting to get involved and it's making me really uncomfortable. For example, our rooms have adjacent windows which allows the kids to see into my entire room at all times. To me, this is pretty inappropriate. What am I supposed to do when I need to change clothes? But I also don't want to seem like I am sexualizing children or accusing them of anything, so I just politely asked for curtains and took to changing in the bathroom. After weeks without curtains, the family finally promised me that someone was coming to put them up. Well, he only put them in the kids' room. Ever since then I find Dario peeping through the curtains at me multiple times a day. Now I'm sure he is just checking on me, or curious about what I'm up to, but it makes me so uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell the family though because I'm afraid they would think I was accusing their baby of trying to spy on me changing, so I just took matters into my own hands and hung a blanket up over my window. Another issue has been when we stay at the kids' grandparents' house. There's a room for the parents, with a bed for one child, and a room for me with a bed for one child. I figured we would split up boys and girls, and I would stay with the daughter, but nighttime rolls around and Dario is crawling into the bed next to mine. I was so uncomfortable I could hardly sleep. I have talked to my friends at home about this and they all think it's really weird, because we aren't related and he's a teenager now. But this is of course an American opinion. So I can't tell for sure if we're imposing our ideas on this family. Again, if this is really a cultural thing though, I don't know how to tell the family that where I'm from, it's kind of inappropriate for a boy so old to be sleeping next to me, especially when he's been spying on me lately. Without causing issues. Of course these behaviors affect other aspects of our life as well, as it is hard to get Dario to do anything because he usually claims it's too hard to do. Making a bed at 13? Too hard? Are you kidding? And I often find myself wanting to tell him to grow up. What I need help with is knowing whether he does need to grow up or if all this behavior is normal here and I'm the crazy American that needs to adjust. Is this behavior normal for a 12-year-old, or is it immature? I feel like the parents still really see him as a young child, and usually he acts like it. But for the most part it seems like he plays up the baby act because he knows it makes his parents cater to him more. If this all is abnormal, does anyone have any suggestions about how to bring this up to the family? Edit. Just want to clarify that at the grandparents' house there are 2 beds, and they are next to each other. Dario was not in my bed but in the bed next to mine. TLDR, I am a nanny for a boy, 13M, whose behavior makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure if he is actually being inappropriate or if there is just a large cultural difference between my home country and this country. Relevant comments. The freaky. It's normal behavior for a spoiled 13-year-old. Of course most adolescents would want to peek at you through the curtains. The problem is the parents, they have to stop that shit right now. Don't you have authority as a nanny to scold him? I'm Spanish, we have a very similar culture to Italy, and that shit is inappropriate. The parents are educating a horrible child that will grow up to be an asshole that thinks the world should cater to him. Oop, oh my goodness, the relief I am feeling right now to know that this isn't normal. So far I have not particularly felt like I have much authority because the times I would scold him, the parents are sitting right there and how can I reprimand him in front of his own parents? I didn't include this in the post but he is already showing major signs of being an asshole. He's always so rude, critical, and ungrateful. Every meal I make he has something to insult about it. He treats his little sister like shit even though she is a doll and often acts more mature than him, and he loves ordering me around and telling me what I'm doing wrong. It drives me up the wall. B186. We've established this kid's behavior is weird. But WTF at the parents responding to your request for privacy/curtains by giving them to the child. OOP, I have no clue. They've been really weird about some stuff. Like, this is TMI, but the mom knew I was on my period because I had to ask her where to buy tampons here, and we got to the house and there's no trash can in the bathroom or in my room. I asked for one multiple times and she said she would get one and never did, and when I asked last she said, well, the kids have a trash can in their room if you need it. Like, WTF, are you not an adult woman? Do you not understand how this works? Do the parents discipline the kids? I asked about discipline when I interviewed and they said they don't really have to discipline the kids. I should have taken it as a warning sign. Honestly, the mom is very strict about some stuff, so they're very good in certain areas that she deems important. Etiquette, cleanliness. But when Dario picks on the daughter, they just let the kids yell and scream and cry until I step in. They also seem to encourage many of Dario's rude comments because technically he does word them politely. For example, I will bust my ass making a meal for the whole family. To be kind and helpful, it is not in my job description. And Dario will eat 4 plates of it and then say, I'm sorry, but why would you cook this like that? And I'll say, that's how we cook it in the US. And he'll say, well, I didn't like it. The Italian way is much better. And then put his plate on mine for me to take it to the kitchen and leave. No thanks for cooking. No, but I did like this part. Just insult. Clean my plate, bye. He loves to criticize. Is the child autistic? I thought about the autism initially, but I'm fairly certain it isn't that, because when his parents are gone the baby act completely turns off and he acts like any other teenager, albeit manipulative and critical, I have ever known. And I have worked in childcare, in the classroom, and as a coach for years now. Update. Hi all, I'm back. Yeesh, how long has it been? 3-4 months later with an update. Long story short, I quit. Here's the long version for those interested. The curtain issue. Like I said in my last post, I had just hung a blanket for privacy, and since then there have been no peeping issues. I asked 2 more times for curtains and was reassured both times that the curtain man would come to hang them in my room. He did come back once and hung more curtains in the kids' room, but again not in mine. Then I was told that they didn't like him and would be finding another curtain guy to hang my curtains. It's been 4 months, no more mention of it, I still use the blanket. The vacation issue, I have simply refused to go on vacation with them. I'm off on weekends and I've reached a point where I just refuse to be home for the entire weekend and manage not to see them from Friday night until Monday morning if I can help it. I go on weekend trips, crash on couches, sneak into my room when they're eating. Things like that just to avoid seeing anyone on my days off. The Dario issue. Dario still acts extremely immaturely. I've warmed up to him a lot, and I've figured out how to cut his rudeness and such. He's become a lot more positive and kind. Especially because his mom has been gone a lot and he's with me every day. I'm very upbeat and have worked really hard to get him to socialize and speak kindly. Unfortunately, he seems to have almost regressed in terms of his childish behavior. He still sits on laps, kisses a lot, and sleeps with a parent when the other is gone. The baby talk is constant. Constant. For example, he loves to repeat back butchered syllables of words, if that makes sense. Like his dad will say, "Pasami un cuchillo." Pass me a spoon. And he will clap and exclaim, "Ayo," or "Voy del agua?" Do you want water? And he'll go "Qua qua." He also has started eating kind of like a baby too. Like he'll take the remaining tomato sauce that we used on pasta and use the giant spoon to drink it out of the pot and get it all over his face, and then suck on each of his fingers. But when I look at his parents, they're looking at him like when you see a cute baby trying to use a fork and getting food on his face. But he's 13, so it's honestly sickening to watch and listen to. He won't lock the door when he goes to the bathroom or showers. Why? I started locking the door when I was like 7. And he even cried the other day when his sister sat on the foot of his bed. He doesn't like things touching his bed. And guess what? The parents got mad at the daughter, said it was her fault for baiting him, she just had to tie her shoe for a second, and declared that it's her fault. Dario will be upset all night. He also hasn't made any progress with friends and has taken to playing League of Legends, so he won't leave his room or do any activities or lessons with me or the sister. It's pretty sad, honestly. Basically, the hardest part of this whole thing has been the mother. I won't even go into it here, but she's honestly clinically insane, and I feel so bad for all the people in this house that have to put up with her. She's just a power-hungry, jealous, bitter woman who needs to see a professional. Basically, I went home for Christmas to be with my friends and family and realized how bad this experience was for my health. I was going out drinking almost every night to escape the house. I was sleeping horribly because I knew she was here and her presence gave me awful anxiety. I was getting yelled at every day even when I did nothing wrong. I was at home in the States and the thought of going back made me absolutely miserable. So when I came back, I told them I needed to go back early for medical reasons. Not totally untrue, and now I'm set to leave the last week of March. They've found a new girl. Look out for her post here sometime in the future. TLDR, Dario is still acting like a baby, the mom is still crazy, and I fucking quit, homies, get me out of here. My ex kicked me out mid-road trip, now demands I drive 2 states to return a watch he stashed in my bag to test me. Original post. So yeah, like the title says, we were both remote workers and decided that we could van life and see things while still working. We lasted about a month, and last week he flipped out over the way I sipped my coffee and told me I had to leave. I thought he meant like we would pack up and figure out how to get me home. No, he meant I needed to get out with all my shit in the middle of a state park in New Mexico and figure it out. I was scared and pissed, so I hurriedly packed everything and got out. A very nice older couple had heard the screaming and saw me with a pile of my stuff and asked if I needed help. I said yes, and they said they would drive me to Albuquerque in their RV and we could figure out what would happen next. Well, it turns out they are the sweetest people ever, and we eventually came to the conclusion it would be easier for me to travel with them home to Kansas, and now they've allowed me to stay, paying them insanely fair rent, food, etc. I just have to edit the wife's book and help the husband with his guitar playing. Well, it turns out in the hurry of packing I grabbed my ex's watch. That was his dad's. I got in touch with him and told him I was sorry. It was truly an accident and I had no intention of keeping it. How would he like me to get it to him? He said I needed to meet him in Utah. I said that was ridiculous, I could send it to him. He said that it was too valuable to trust to mail or FedEx and needed to be hand-relieved. I said I was in Kansas and not coming to Utah, but I would return the watch to his brother when I go home in March. He said no, the only solution was for me to drive it to him. I said I didn't even have a car. He said, you're probably fucking half of Lawrence, use one of theirs. At that point I blocked him. The watch is pretty valuable and has a lot of sentimental value, and I will return it. It was my oversight that I have it in the first place. What are my obligations to follow his instructions to get the watch back to him? Edit. Wow, this blew up. For the people asking, it is a lower-end Rolex watch. It still has all the original box and even receipt when his dad bought it, but it was well worn, so he's never been sure how much it's worth. I guess a few hundred, maybe 1,000, so I'm not sure. I'm not going to keep it or destroy it since it's not mine in any way. Top comments. Comment 1. You gave reasonable options. Let's say he files a police report that you stole it. You have proof that you contacted him and asked where you could send it. He declined. Comment 2. Dude sounds like a psychopath. Do not under any circumstances willingly meet up with him in person ever again. Don't let him know where you live. This level of douchery is a sign of something being very off, and you don't want to be there again when he short circuits again. You were extremely lucky to have found the people you did. Who knows where you'd be if that had not happened. Update. So I posted exactly a week ago. Link below, but the short story was I was van living with my ex-boyfriend. He kicked me out after a temper tantrum and I caught a ride with some awesome people. I discovered I had an ex's dad's watch that had lots of sentimental value. I told him, asked where I should send it. He demanded I drive from Kansas to Utah and return it even though I don't have a car. Well, so lots of mixed advice, but most people said the best option was to contact his brother. Before I did that, I decided to unblock my ex just to give him one more chance to give me an address where I could ship the watch. Actual text conversation. Me? Hey, I'm sorry I blocked you. I just didn't appreciate the insults, but I want to get her dad's watch back. Can you let me know where to send it? I'll pay for shipping, no problem. Like less than 30 seconds later, him. I stashed the watch in your bag because I wanted to prove to myself what an awful person you are and do a good job at proving me right again. I was like, wow, so many people in the original said that he probably put the watch in my stuff as I was packing in order to force communication and force the opportunity to see him again. Well, you were exactly correct. I didn't even respond to his text and blocked him again. I have no intention of keeping the watch, so I decided now it was time to contact his brother, who, along with his wife, has always been very nice to me. He was super appreciative and we spent a couple days going back and forth figuring out the shipping, but the watch arrived to him on Friday and all is good. He even Venmo'd me $1,000 for being so honest, contacting him, etc. I make really good money, so I told him it wasn't necessary at all, but he insisted, so we agreed to donate it to a food pantry here in Lawrence. But I'm still so creeped out thinking about the day when he kicked me out of the van and he was screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names, and he was planning to stay in touch with me. He was slamming all my stuff into bags, but that was cover for him hiding the watch. The fact that it was so deliberate yet he thought of it so quickly is so scary to me. We got along so well before we left and he always seemed like such a great guy. I don't know if the confined space of the van is too much for any couple or if it brought out a side of him I didn't know was there. Makes me sad and scared at the same time. But relieved it's over. Relevant comments. Comment 1. He framed you? To prove to himself that you were awful? He's dumb enough to fall for his own frame job? I really truly can't wrap my head around how stupid he must be. Comment 2. What I don't get is his logic that this would prove OP's a bad person. How the fuck was she supposed to know about the watch when you kicked her ass out in a state she didn't know about it until after she got to safety, possibly thousands of miles away? Like you thought she was just gonna be running back to you? Fuck that dude. Comment 3. I think in his batshit crazy mind she was bad to not instantly head to Utah to return it. He's clearly insane. Revealing my brother's darkest secrets sparked an explosive Mother's Day confrontation, leading my family to cut ties with him. Years of repressed feelings and unresolved tensions exploded over the Mother's Day breakfast. For the sake of peace, our family continued to strive to maintain civility even though my brother Sam had always treated me badly. I was usually the silent one, wanting to be his buddy in spite of everything, and forgiving him for things I shouldn't have. For a long time I let him treat me whatever he pleased since I had no idea what a true sibling relationship should feel like when I was growing up. I've matured emotionally over the years and currently reside with my parents. I became resentful of Sam after realizing how poorly he had treated me, and I eventually stopped talking to him. Mother's Day followed. Sam and his fiancée Leah joined us for brunch. I went to help my mom even though I had a migraine because I was afraid Sam would abruptly cancel, as he frequently does. His only remarks were patronizing, but I hardly spoke to him. We went outdoors after lunch, and the heat was making my migraine worse. When I asked Sam to go, he became irate and told me that no one had requested me to come in the first place. The anxiety increased even after my mother swiftly defended me. I finally had enough. After years of frustration, I turned around and faced him. Sam had already acknowledged that he wasn't pleased with Leah, claiming that she made him miserable, but he was scared of being by himself, I reminded him. I practically reminded him of how he had wounded me. He once grabbed me by the neck and held me against a wall until I passed out when I attempted to stop him from driving while intoxicated. He has never shown regret for that night, the PTSD it created, or the grief he inflicted. Even the fact that he didn't come see me in the hospital following my injury or during my 3-month recuperation at home was disregarded by him. It was quite painful. His defense was feeble when he did reply. He asserted that my college residence was funded by our parents, as though that in some way excused his actions. They also covered him, I reminded him. Puffing up his chest, avoiding responsibility and challenging anyone to challenge him were all hallmarks of Sam. I made it plain that he was not a member of my family at that point and instructed him not to get in touch with me ever again. As they conversed, my dad gently led me back to the car. I had said everything I needed to say, so I didn't listen. My mom cut off Leah's attempt to clarify that Sam had denied me permission to stay with them due to their 2 enormous dogs. I never intended to bring my own dog Pebbles, but Sam had lied and said I did. Sam vowed that as long as I was around, he would never return to the house. Mom promptly put an end to my brother Sam's recent attempt to have my parents expel me. She said that it's entirely his fault and that I'm far higher on the family hierarchy than he is. Mom was first conflicted. As a mother, it was difficult for her to think about severing Sam's relationship even though she knew he was totally at fault. However, Mom acknowledged that she was incensed when I detailed all the horrible things he had done to me and other family members. Assuming that sibling arguments were common and that I was always the one who was fine, she even expressed regret for not disciplining him more when we were younger. Sam refused, saying he wasn't ready to deal with her yet, even though she texted him that an apology would be greatly appreciated. My parents informed me that they would not go to Sam's wedding if I was not invited. They desired that he be held accountable for his deeds. To be honest, the idea behind the wedding is that I wouldn't attend even if I were invited. I revealed to Mom that Sam had actually embezzled almost $800 from Dad over the years, which was more than we initially believed. I also disclosed that he had harmed me physically and mentally by having sex in both my parents and my beds. Despite all, Sam's success at work is solely due to Dad's efforts, and on Father's Day, he was unable to send a text. He became upset when Mom reminded him, saying it ruined his day. That really got us going. We became aware of how badly Sam had fouled things up as we vented. Both Sam and Leah, his fiancée, don't have many friends. She is angry that their grandmother won't give Leah's child all of her attention, so she doesn't talk to either her mother or her sister. Given that I enjoy organizing things, they most likely expected me to assist in planning their wedding, baby shower and other events. Now that Sam would make me dog sit without my consent, I don't know who will assist her. Years ago Leah made offensive remarks regarding babysitting, saying that Mom wouldn't want strangers watching her kids. This further strained her relationship with her mother. They probably thought I would act as the compassionate sister and offer assistance, but that isn't the case. Sam used to treat me like his therapist, but he didn't show any sympathy after my 14-year-old dog died. In the meantime, he revealed that he is afraid for the day she passes away since he wouldn't know what to do with one of his senior dogs. Well, he is no longer able to rely on me. Now that Leah is aware of Sam's actual feelings for her, I assume the engagement is tense. Leah is slowly coming to the realization that Sam has also lied to her about me. To be honest, I have no idea or interest in how it is going for them. Both of them are blocked. We even wager that Sam believes I'll give in and get him a present for his birthday without him having to say sorry. He will be rudely awakened. Dad was outraged and said, "I can't even trust my own family," after learning how much money Sam had stolen. For me, that was the tipping moment. I used to be amenable to apologizing and mending our friendship, but I'm done now. When Leah showed us the sonogram, I felt sick to my stomach. With the hope that Sam would change his mind, my family and I had dreaded the day when he would be married and have a child. In particular, Leah struggles to care for herself. Unfortunately, they both damaged their relationships with everyone who could have been of assistance to them. In light of everything that has transpired, my mom and I made an effort to make Dad's birthday last week extra special. Every year, Dad's place of employment hosts a family appreciation day at a nearby amusement park. Sam also works there, but unless we go together, he normally doesn't pay attention to these activities. On his birthday, Sam surprisingly texted Dad to ask if they wanted to do something over the weekend. Dad said Sam would see him closer to the date because he had been working on projects and was taking a week off around his birthday. Sam texted once again on Friday as the weekend drew near, wondering if they might get together. Dad had a little shift on Sunday, and Saturday was the day for family appreciation. Dad didn't want to go alone, so he told Sam they were busy, even though my mom had informed him he could go without her if he so desired. Even if they had been free, I sincerely hoped they wouldn't consent to meet him, so I was relieved when Mom told me about it. "Maybe we'll get back to him about his birthday around Christmas," Mom joked after reassuring me. Even though he lives only 10 minutes away, Sam is notoriously awful at commemorating occasions and providing gifts, and he frequently sends cards much after the customary time. For example, what did he anticipate happening? "After everything, I needed that laugh." As an aside, a commenter brought up the fact that Sam's chokehold was truly a felony, that is, the strangulation of a kid. I was struck with that realization. I never really thought it was a crime because I was so accustomed to his physical outbursts. On that one, he totally avoided the repercussions. Although I believe that too much time has gone, I still want to see whether there is anything I can do legally about it. In any case, hearing about the text conversation with Sam made me chuckle and helped to diffuse the tension. "If Sam is ready to deal with me yet?" a humorous commenter inquired. The irony is that he most likely isn't aware that Saturday was actually scheduled. Since he and Dad share a workplace, Dad might easily learn about Sam's schedule, including that Sunday duty. In any case, Sam will believe that my parents are ignoring him on my behalf and come to the realization that they are not forgiving of him so easily. He might genuinely comprehend the repercussions for the first time. Recently, I had another unsettling thought. What does Sam's violent conduct signify for my future niece or nephew if it hasn't changed? Even after 15 years, the trauma still affects me. Sam has a history of losing control under pressure, getting lethargic, and drinking more. I'm also concerned for their child because Leah can hardly take care of herself. Sam probably wants me to be sympathetic and take on the role of caregiver. But even if I wanted to, I honestly don't know if I could handle that legally. Given how much time has gone by, anxiety makes me question whether the authorities would even consider me seriously. We showed up unannounced, which actually means we came twice a year, both times when we had car issues nearby as Leah has complained about. Her family, meanwhile, frequently visits without any problems. Leah isn't very important to any of us anyway. Not knowing if our dad would survive, she once pulled Sam and me from his hospital bed so we could go to her mom's weekly dinner. She used it as a weapon when Sam actually yelled at her on the way back, accusing him of not giving a damn about her family. Mom finally threw Sam out after he failed to discipline his dog after it hurt her, asking him to get his act together. Although I know my parents truly love me, I find it frustrating that they haven't held him accountable in the past. They were fostering children at the time to help pay for Sam's education tuition and to make ends meet, so they would have lost their license if they had reported him. By that point, Sam was only home during breaks, and fortunately, there were no other children there. Regarding childcare, I no longer have any sympathy for Sam or Leah. Before allowing them to abuse their child or, worse, if Sam ever throws his child on me without asking, I would contact CPS. I no longer consider them family. Let's move on to the next family matter, my brother's wedding. Because of his controlling mother-in-law, there were no children. At this point, Leo, my kid, won't interact with him in any way. My family has always been close-knit and has supported me in raising Leo. I am a 46-year-old single father. Leo's favorite person in the past was my brother Jack. Because Jack and Mary had flexible work hours when Leo was younger, they frequently took him to the zoo, aquarium, or even camping. As my son got older, he began to share my brother's passions for video games, photography, and music. Leo informed me he wanted to follow in his uncle's footsteps when he was 9 years old. All of this is to suggest that they were very close. My brother told me last year that he and Mary, his girlfriend, were getting married. When I questioned Jack and his girlfriend about it, they told me it was all Karen's idea, my stepsister's mother, because I knew they didn't think marriage was a good idea. Karen was paying for the wedding, so Jack and Mary didn't give a damn, so they let her organize everything, including the location, the food, the music, etc. Karen made the decision to organize a destination wedding in an upscale hotel. Last July my son and I received the invitation that was sent to us both. If I so desired, I even had a +1. I attempted to book our hotel stay as soon as the wedding website launched. Since the link wasn't working and I didn't want to take the chance of not getting a room, I had to call the hotel. The confirmation email stated room for 2 adults, but I didn't give it much thought because I thought the hotel personnel were having trouble communicating in English. At about the same time, I also purchased our airline tickets. Less than a month before the wedding, in January, my stepsister called me in tears. Karen had chosen the wrong location. It turns out that the resort was exclusively for adults and that children were not permitted. At the time, my kid was 13. They informed me that the entire resort was child-free, so Leo wouldn't even be permitted to attend the ceremony or reception when I asked if we might stay at another hotel. Disappointed, I promised my stepsister that I would discuss it with my kid. She insisted that she and Jack wanted to tell him face to face, even though I knew how thrilled he was about his uncle's wedding. To be honest, my son was heartbroken. When he was informed that he would not be allowed to go, he broke down in tears. He begged them to move the wedding and even offered to donate all of his savings. After half an hour, my brother became irate and told Leo that the day wasn't about him and that he was being self-centered. After a while, Leo apologized and retired to his room. My son ceased communicating with my brother after the wedding. Leo would disregard any messages Jack sent him unless they were important to me. For instance, he couldn't get through to me, so he would only respond if Jack asked him to tell me something. Leo would answer simple queries at family get-togethers, such as "Can you pass the salt?" or "Help grandma with the plates," but he would turn away from Jack and Mary if they attempted to strike up a conversation or inquire about school. To make up for the wedding, Jack and Mary promised to treat Leo to a memorable spring break getaway a month after the wedding. After turning down the invitation, my son informed me that he didn't want to accompany them. I knew he had always wanted to go there, so it was devastating, but he refused to back down. Leo had a similar incident on his birthday. After I told him that I was going to throw him a party, he urged me not to invite his aunt and uncle. He claimed that if they didn't want him on their special day, he didn't want them on his. I attempted to persuade him by reminding him that they were family and that they were sincerely sorry. When I informed my brother that he was not invited, he was devastated. But this past weekend at my mom's place, things reached a breaking point. The topic of Leo's plans for college came up. Leo told my mother that he was no longer interested in going to the same university as Jack and that he had decided to pursue another course of study. "Why would I want to be like your uncle?" my son said in response to my mother's statement that "I thought you wanted to be like your uncle." I stepped in and informed Leo that although he didn't need to be so impolite, the harm had already been done. After hearing what he had to say, my brother and stepsister quickly fled. My brother texted me last night to call me a jerk for letting Leo harbor resentment. He even implied that I wasn't doing anything to improve their connection by accusing me of being envious of it. I explained to him that these were the results of his behavior and that he was solely responsible for letting his future mother-in-law organize the wedding when she obviously didn't take my child into account. He ended the call. My mother and some relatives believe that in order for us to all move on, I should make my kid forgive my brother, saying that it was only a small error and that there was no malice. However, I don't believe I ought to. My kid was obviously harmed, and he should only be given the opportunity to move past his hurt and forgive them when he is ready. Recent update. For a while, we will be avoiding family gatherings. My brother promised to accept Leo's boundaries after we spoke. In addition, he clarified the actual events, and most importantly, Leo is currently doing considerably better. Here is a longer update for those who are interested. I told my mother that until things calmed down and, more importantly, until Leo felt at ease again, we would no longer be going to family events. I believe she finally realized how much Leo had been hurting, even if she was rightfully upset. My mother surprised me by telling me that she was adamant that Leo forgive Jack since he had fallen into a depression. I clarified that pressuring Leo to forgive could end in driving him farther away. When I informed my sister that we would no longer be attending family events, she expressed sadness as well, but she claimed to understand. To ensure that the kids could still spend time together, she recommended that we establish our own weekly ritual. For the past few weeks, that's what we've been doing. Leo spends time at her place one week, then my nieces and nephews visit me the next. Leo seems content with this arrangement and it appears to be working so far. The fact that he is not under parental pressure to engage with his uncle, in my opinion, is beneficial. I texted my brother the weekend after my post, requesting a meeting and conversation. Mary wasn't there because I told him I wanted to talk to him alone. Jack instantly expressed regret for his actions and words, expressing his regret for both. He supported my presumption that his frequent arguments with Mary had caused him worry. He also said that the arguments had gotten so heated that he had thought about getting a divorce. I may come out as harsh, but I informed him that I only wanted the truth about what had happened and didn't care about that. According to Jack, he was unaware of the child-free location until November. But Mary had known for a long time, perhaps all of it, as many of you suspected. It seems that this all began when Jack and Mary took Leo to the beach a few years ago. My son unintentionally called Jack Dad when they were playing, but he swiftly corrected himself. According to Jack, it was a minor innocuous error, similar to when a toddler unintentionally addresses a teacher as mom. Leo felt ashamed, but Jack dismissed it with a laugh. The problem was that Leo had been overheard by Jack's stepmother, Karen, and her husband Phil, who had accompanied them on that trip. Karen lost out when they got back from their vacation, saying she was triggered by a random kid calling Jack Dad, especially since she knew Mary couldn't have kids. Karen became very poisonous and aggressive toward Mary, demanding among other things, that Leo not be welcomed over when she visited, despite Mary's attempts to clarify that it was only a misunderstanding. At first, Jack and Mary only intended to elope without a celebration when they made the decision to get married. However, Mary was tricked by Karen into allowing her to organize the ideal wedding for her only daughter. Mary gave in because she wanted to maintain harmony and was worn out after years of emotional manipulation. Karen deliberately selected the child-free location and took control of the wedding preparations. Mary found out after the place was reserved, but Karen played the victim when she attempted to protest. According to Mary, she tried to work out a deal with the resort, requesting an exception so the kids could stay at a separate hotel and yet attend the ceremony and reception, but the manager was adamant about the rules. Mary became more and more nervous as the wedding date drew near, and in November she told Jack the truth. My brother claims that Mary's emotional outburst was caused by her mother's persistent bullying and manipulation. And she felt terrible for allowing things to come to this point. Jack informed me that rather than excluding Leo and my sister's kids from the wedding, he would have intervened and called it off if he had known sooner. Canceling was not an option though, as many individuals had already reserved their hotel rooms and flights by that point. Ultimately, I informed my brother that none of this justified their actions, particularly Mary's. A woman in her 40s was arguing with a child. When all Leo wanted to do was offer the $2,000 he had saved so he could attend Jack's special day, she screamed at him and called him selfish. I told Jack that he had disappointed Leo, who admired him and thought of him as a hero. Jack had demonstrated to Leo that Jack valued him more than he did. I also informed him that I would be going low contact myself and that I would continue to support Leo's decision to stop communicating with him. I told Jack that he had already apologized enough when he begged for another chance to apologize to Leo. He had no choice except to wait and see if my kid would ever accept his apology. Despite his seeming sadness, Jack assured me that he would honor our requests and give us some space and time. Regarding my son, I expressed regret for not advocating for him earlier and for making him attend weekly family meetings. I informed him that he was free to choose how he wanted to manage that aspect of the family in the future. Although he was hesitant to stop going, I assured him that I would always be there for him and that I wouldn't be offended by his choice. Leo recommended that we spend more time together, just the two of us, rather than attending weekly family events, which pleased me. He suggested that we partake in some of the things he and my brother used to do. We attended a vintage car exhibition last week, and we're going to see Wicked the following week. It sounds like fun, but I'm not a theatrical person. I also expressed my concern that he had stopped doing the activities he loved and advised him not to give them up because he had a disagreement with a loved one. I clarified that he may still enjoy things alone or with a companion. He acknowledged that he had stopped doing such things out of spite for Jack, even though he truly wanted to. I chose to buy him some games that he had been looking forward to but had refunded following the altercation with my brother as an early Christmas present. Using his PC and my PS5, he even persuaded me to play one of his Final Fantasy games online. Since the last Final Fantasy the game I played was still in 2D. I'll admit that I have no idea what I'm doing, but he seems to like seeing me fail. We would appreciate any advice you may have. For my birthday, we ultimately agreed to travel to his ideal location. I was a little depressed that I wouldn't be celebrating my brother's birthday for the first time in nearly 50 years, but all that matters is that I had my son. Leo is less anxious and happier as a result of family matters. In relation to family, it appears that they are at last honoring our limits, which is a relief. All I can hope for is that my brother can improve his marriage. Even though I don't like what they did, I do want him to be content. My family treated me unfairly, favoring my twin. In the end, she used lies and manipulation to steal my fiancé. Life has a tendency of catching you off guard, don't you think? I, 35F, never imagined that I would be here, sharing my heart on Reddit at the age of 35. The idea that my fiancé, the man I believed I would spend the rest of my life with, married my estranged twin sister after just a week of getting to know her, still baffles me. What brought me here? Everything's a lengthy and agonizing tale, but I must let everything out. I suppose I ought to begin at the beginning. To put it mildly, my twin sister and I have had a complex family dynamic for as long as I can remember. My sister was obviously the star child from a young age. You would assume that parents would treat twins equally, wouldn't they? False. In our family, my sister always came first and I came second. When we were young, it began with modest things. My sister always had the first choice when our parents bought us clothes or toys. She would always make the first choice, leaving me with anything she didn't like, even if the products were identical but different in color. I would be lectured about selfishness, how the gifts were the same anyway, and how acting entitled would make me never get far in life if I ever objected. The preference increased in intensity as we aged. I'll admit that I resented my sister for enjoying the attention and pampering. We were never close, and as we started middle school, our distance from one another only grew. She began hanging out with the cool kids, and distanced herself from our group of friends. I could at least have my buddies to myself and find some quiet at school, so in a way this was better for me. The distance between my sister and I continued to widen throughout middle and high school. By the time we graduated, our social networks and areas of interest had entirely changed. Because I would be interacting with her less, this worked for me. Although she continued to be cruel, particularly at school when she tried to appear cool to her peers, I had grown accustomed to her conduct by that point and was not particularly bothered by it. Things between us became so bad at the conclusion of high school that there was no turning back. I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I put a lot of effort into my college applications. In addition, I wanted to stay up with my pals, who were all striving for top schools. Since I wasn't interested in finding out, I never inquired about my sister's essay preparation. However, for someone who wasn't ready or didn't seem to know what she wanted to do, she exuded far too much confidence in her admissions. I was devastated to learn that she was accepted to my ideal school, but I was not. Even though I was sad, I felt uneasy. I discovered, just in time, that she had stolen my work and turned it in as her own after doing some research. I was enraged. As usual, my parents would have told me to suck it up and that nothing could be done now, so I didn't want to inform them. I had had enough of being polite and being trampled. I made the decision to go nuclear. I sent the university an email outlining her plagiarism and proving that the material was actually mine. Additionally, I informed them of the circumstances at home and asked that they use caution when responding to her. They did, however, reply and put her on a blacklist after discovering that she had plagiarized during the application process. She sat stunned when she received the email and gave me such a hateful look that I thought I would pass out. However, she was unable to tell her parents anything. That she stole my essay. What could she have said? I was more than happy that she was finally receiving the credit she deserved, even though I knew I had put her in a difficult situation. I'll confess that it was stressful and, to me at least, a little funny. She was aware of my actions and I was aware of hers. She was unable to go because it would require her to acknowledge that she had stolen my work, and I didn't want to go to my parents for a resolution. Unfortunately for her, this injustice devastated her parents. They insisted that there was no plagiarism involved, and were resolved to bring it up with the university. It became messy at this point. When my parents emailed the institution, they received a thorough response regarding her application and the work, my work, from which she had stolen. I mistakenly thought that after they witnessed what their beloved daughter had done to me, they would finally accept her for who she truly was, and perhaps, just possibly, I would start to play a significant role in the family. The exact reverse was what took place. I spent days being scolded for intentionally destroying my sister's life and profession. They chose someone to harass as soon as they discovered that I was the one who had reported the plagiarism. She stole my work, but that didn't matter. The fact that she was at fault didn't matter. The fact that she prevented me from attending my ideal school didn't matter. The fact that I had exposed her without their knowledge was all that mattered. They called me all kinds of names and stated that talking to them about it would have been the right thing to do, after which they would have come up with a solution. I informed them that letting her leave without any consequences would have been their only option, and I would have been told to accept it and apply somewhere else. My home was a wreck and nobody wanted to hear my side of the story. It was now obvious that I would always be the fall guy and that my sister would never be held accountable for anything she did. I was just waiting for college, but the following few months were terrible. I knew that as soon as I left the house, I would never return. In any case, there was nothing to return to, so I did just that. I instantly stopped communicating with my sister and my parents after leaving for college. After her little incident, she was dead to me, and I had no intention of ever seeing her again. Going to college was a welcome adjustment. I worked hard, had a good life and made good friends. Determining to succeed on my own without assistance from my family, I immersed myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I met around this period, and we remained friends for a few years. We had the same group of friends, even though he was my senior in college. He asked me to be his girlfriend just before he graduated, and I accepted. Since he was one of my best friends and I enjoyed spending time with him, I thought a relationship would be the natural next step. He informed me that he had been crushing on me for years and had been trying to have the guts to ask me out until I said yes. Sincerely, I thought this was cute and informed him that even if he had asked me sooner, I would have said yes. For what it's worth, our connection was good. We knew each other well because we were already close friends. A certain amount of ease and candor was present and it just happened. I also told him about my family's whole predicament. I clarified that nothing could ever force me to speak to my sister again and that I had very little contact with either of my parents. I requested that he honor that. His family is picture perfect, therefore he found it ridiculous that a family could be so dysfunctional. He is the eldest of 4 siblings, all of whom are supportive and close, and his parents are deeply in love. He has never experienced my ordeal. I liked and appreciated the familial dynamic he came from, and I respected that. The affection they had for one another was really sweet. I couldn't help but feel a little envious because I had never had it. But because he couldn't imagine dysfunctional families, I made it plain to him that he should never expect me to return to my family and attempt to make things right. I trusted him since he appeared fine with it. I had no idea that this would turn out to be my worst life decision. I concentrated on developing my career after college. I was resolved to show myself, and if I'm being completely honest, my family, that I could be successful without their help or connections. I put myself into my work and worked my way up the corporate ladder. I had a prosperous marketing career, a great downtown apartment and a circle of close friends who had become my adopted family by the time I was in my early 30s. We both decided to take things slowly, but and I kept dating. Neither of us felt the need to rush into marriage because we were both focused on our careers. I felt like I had at last found someone who understood and supported me, and the arrangement was comfortable. Proposed to me 2 years ago when I was 33. Yes, of course, I said. By that point we had been dating for about 8 years, and I was certain that he was the man I wanted to live my entire life with. His family welcomed me with wide arms when he first introduced me to them. Even though it wasn't biological, I felt like I had a family at last. I formed separate ties with each of his siblings, who were very hospitable, 2 sisters and 1 brother. Even before I married him, I felt like I was a member of the family. The next natural step was marriage, and I was quite content with my life and my relationship. Planning for the wedding, honeymoon, and other details took up the whole year prior to our planned wedding last year. It was a difficult period for our relationship as well as stressful since I recognized then that we had differences and that it would take work to overcome them. Nevertheless, we voluntarily persevered. While deciding on the guest list, we got into one of our most heated arguments. He wanted to invite a large number of people, including his immediate relatives, some uncles, aunts, his siblings' partners, and others, but I wanted a small, private wedding. However, I didn't have any family members I wanted to invite. I informed him that I genuinely didn't want my family near me on my wedding day and that I would only be inviting my friends. He initially agreed, but I could tell he was hesitant. When I asked him if there was an issue, he said that there wasn't, so I dropped it. Nevertheless, he approached me a week later and advised me to invite my family since there would be no wedding without a family present. I gave him a wide-eyed look and informed him that I had always made it plain that my family was not involved in my life. There was no reason to be upset about my parents' absence because they were unaware that I was engaged and that the bride and groom were the only two guests required for a wedding. He refused to give up. He said that any arguments I had with them could be put aside for a single day and that his intention was only to invite them to the wedding, not to establish a romantic relationship or extend forgiveness. Any invitation, I informed him, would imply that I wanted to patch things up, and I didn't want to do that. I should have left him there. Looking back, I could tell that he had chosen to hurl this at me even though he claimed to understand my reality and my upbringing, which I had always been open about. But in love, I was a fool. I nearly stopped talking to him after our many arguments, but I knew deep down that we had to come to an agreement. He finally explained to me why he insisted on inviting my family after much back and forth. He claimed that he didn't want his relatives to believe that he was getting married to a woman who didn't get along well with her family. He believed that my parents' absence would reflect negatively on his family, which is highly traditional and has always lived by the family first motto. That was not what he wanted for me. I initially believed his way of thinking to be considerate and caring, but I soon came to see how flawed it was. Since his parents and siblings already knew that I didn't get along with mine, he was more concerned about the impression his family would get, particularly his extended family, than he was about the psychological effects on me. I should have seen that the show was more important to him than his wife. I paid the price for not doing so. I finally decided to phone my folks after much back and forth, but there was where I crossed the boundary. I informed him that while I would have them there, my sister and no other family members would be present. My family would not be permitted to speak, and there would be no father-daughter dance. He had to put himself in my shoes, and that was the only need for inviting them. Fortunately, he consented, and he was aware that he had little other option. Additionally, I cautioned him against reaching out to people on his own. I would only call and extend an invitation when I thought the time was appropriate. I knew they would make something up and convince my sister to go if I told them too soon, and I couldn't agree to that. To be honest, I also hoped that they might not be able to make it if I told them too late. In this manner, even though I would be technically correct, I would still get my way. I believe M had a suspicion, but even if he had, he remained silent. So that was that. 6 weeks before the wedding, I told my parents, and they assured me that the whole family will undoubtedly be present to support me on this wonderful day. I interrupted them immediately and informed them that my sister would not be attending my wedding in any way. I would take them out myself if they attempted to be cunning and brought her anyhow, even if just the two of them were invited. They attempted to object, claiming that it was the ideal moment for the family to get back together, that I should stop being a baby, that I had gotten my revenge, and that I should be content. Before the wedding, I informed them that this was the only way I would be contacting them. They were aware of the location and the time, and they could attend if they so desired. But I wouldn't think twice about taking the required action if they tried anything. I hung up the phone after that. I was completely mistaken to believe that was a strong enough warning to stop them from making any plans. I should have anticipated that my sister would show up there and cause chaos. She did create a mess, but it was far more extensive than I had anticipated. I need to get this off my chest. Yet as I sit here typing this, I can feel the hurt and rage rising within me once more. What happened next was a betrayal so profound and agonizing that it rocked the foundations of the life I had worked so hard to create, and I needed to tell someone, anyone, what happened next. In my upcoming update, I'll continue this. I need some time to gather my thoughts because writing it all at once hurts too much. I appreciate you reading this far. I had no idea that I would be telling my tale in this way, but here we are. I would be grateful to hear your opinions and advice. Right now, I feel completely lost. Update 1. A week has passed since my last post, and I'm still in shock about everything that transpired. We appreciate all of your encouraging messages and remarks. I never thought that strangers on the internet would be so generous. Where did I leave off then? Yes, the dreaded family invitation and the wedding planning. In case you're not convinced, things have gotten worse. My parents came into town via plane the week before the wedding. They asked if M and I could meet at their hotel so they could give me something. M persuaded me to go despite my reservations, suggesting that it might be a peace offering. He assured me that he would accompany me and that we would depart as soon as difficulty appeared. I felt sick to my stomach when we got to the motel. I sensed a problem as soon as we entered their room. My twin sister was seated on the bed, grinning smugly, and there she was. Just a few days before my wedding, my parents had ambushed us in the hopes of forcing a family reunion. I went cold. The old emotions of hurt, betrayal, and rage returned with a vengeance. M put his hand on my back when he could tell I was upset, but it didn't help much. With her arms extended as though the past 15 years of separation didn't matter, my mother took a stand. "We thought it was time to move on from the past," she remarked, her voice brimming with fake tenderness. "Your sister wants to talk to you about something." My sister got up and began what seemed like a prepared statement before I could respond. "I apologize for what happened with the college application, and I know I hurt you," she started. "I've regretted that ever since I was foolish and young." I gave a sour laugh. "Young and dim-witted? We weren't 8, we were 18. You were fully aware of what you were doing." My father added in a firm tone. "Now, let's avoid bringing up previous points of contention. As a family, we are here to move forward." I looked to M, expecting him to support me and remind them of our wedding deal, but he was silent and had a serious look on his face. I trembled as I murmured, "May we go now?" After he paused, he said something that completely shocked me. "Perhaps we ought to listen to them. After all, they are trying." I turned and left the room without saying another word. Trying to make sense of what had happened, I headed to the hotel bar and ordered a heavy drink. Hours went by. My phone was vibrating, and I chose to ignore the never-ending barrage of missed calls and messages. When I eventually returned to our flat, it was already midnight. M was pacing the living room while she waited to wake up. Hours passed while we argued. M insisted that I should at least attempt to make amends because family was vital. How he could be so oblivious to the suffering they had inflicted upon me was beyond me. We were clearly at a standstill as the night went on. "I need some time," I responded at last. "I'll be spending a few days with a friend. I must think." The days that followed were a haze. I ignored me and my family's calls and texts and stayed with my best pal. I needed time to reflect and determine my true desires. The more I considered it, the more I saw how deeply M's actions had damaged my faith in him. I eventually consented to meet with M 3 days prior to the wedding. A calm cafe where we had gone on our first date years prior served as a neutral setting for our meeting. I didn't miss the irony. M appeared awful. He appeared to have aged years in a matter of days, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I was still angry and hurt, but I also felt bad for putting him through this. He started, "I'm sorry," as soon as I took a seat. "I ought not to have pressured you to make amends with your relatives. I was mistaken." Hours passed while we recapped past exchanges and upsetting experiences. Ultimately, we reached a decision that felt necessary but shattered my heart. M whispered, "I think we need to postpone the wedding. We clearly have some issues we need to work through." With a mixture of relief and regret, I nodded. "I think that's for the best." We came away from the cafe with a rough plan. We would separate for a month, avoid communication, and give our desires some serious thought. We would then get together once more to determine whether to proceed with the wedding or, well, we didn't want to consider the other option. I began making calls the following day. I informed our vendors that the wedding would have to be postponed indefinitely. Although we lost some deposits, most were understanding. I communicated with our visitors by sending out a general email outlining the circumstances in ambiguous language. Then there was quiet. Like an unending desert, the month without communication stretched out in front of me. To distract myself from the uncertainties of my relationship, I immersed myself into my work and picked up new interests. I initially incessantly checked my phone, half hoping, partly expecting to find a message from M. However, I noticed that I was checking less and less as the days stretched into weeks. During our connection, I began to rediscover aspects of myself that I had previously allowed to slip away. I started painting again, got back in touch with old acquaintances, and even went to the beach for a weekend by myself. I experienced a mixture of dread and excitement as the month's end drew near. Another part of me, which was getting stronger every day, questioned if perhaps this separation was for the best, but I still wanted to see him again to see if we could salvage what we had. I received a call from an unknown number the day before our scheduled meeting. I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years when I responded. The shaky voice of my sister. "Please, don't get married to Emu." Suddenly, my world began to shift on its axis once more. However, that is a tale for a future update. I apologize for leaving you waiting, but I need time to think about what transpired next. I appreciate everyone listening and helping me get through this nightmare. I will return soon with additional details about the story. Update 2. My previous update was almost 11 months ago. I'm sorry for the extended silence, but I needed time to take it all in. I appreciate your support and patience, everyone. My estranged sister had just given me a startling phone call urging me not to marry M when I left off. From there, however, things only became more difficult. I met M the following day as scheduled after that enigmatic call. I knew something was seriously wrong the moment I laid eyes on him. He had black circles under his eyes and appeared gaunt. I was about to respond when he suddenly exclaimed, "I made a terrible mistake." My heart fell. My world was shattered by his next statement. With his voice hardly audible above a whisper, he admitted, I married your sister." I briefly believed I had misheard him. How was it possible for him to wed my sister? Only a month has passed since our separation. I experienced a wave of nausea as the reality set in. M then told me an absurd story that sounded like the storyline of a poorly written soap opera. My family apparently persuaded M to listen to them after I left that day. They told him stories about my early years, portraying my sister as the victim and myself as the troublemaker. What's the worst? He took them at face value. I felt offended and bewildered. Your family seemed so sincere and I thought maybe I didn't have the full picture. M attempted to clarify. I made a foolish choice. My sister and parents had hatched a complex scheme. To avoid being made fun of by his family, they proposed that M wed my sister for the ceremony. After the commotion subsided, they could have the marriage dissolved or divorced. Despite the absurdity of the proposition, M had somehow consented while he was confused and being manipulated. Stunned into stillness, I sat. I was so deeply and profoundly betrayed that I was at a loss for words to describe how angry and heartbroken I was. I got up at last. "I never want to see you again," I stated in a remarkably composed tone. "You, my sister, my parents. You're all dead to me now." The weeks that followed were a jumble of suffering, rage, and incredulity. Unable to face the world, I took a leave of absence from my job. Despite the support of my friends, I was distraught. During this depressing time, M's mother called me out of the blue. Something compelled me to answer the phone even though I didn't want to at first. "Please," she said in a tearful voice. "I must see you. You must be aware of something." I agreed to meet her against my better judgment. At a little park close to my place, we first met. Her eyes were red from sobbing, and she looked terrible. She disclosed the whole scope of what had happened. M had been duped by my family, who had played on his fears and fed him tales about my background. They had persuaded him that I was unstable and that I had fabricated tales about my family in the past. But why would he believe them over me? Still having trouble understanding, I asked. Tragically, she shook her head. He had a susceptible condition. Your relatives took advantage of the fact that your abrupt departure had unsettled him. She clarified that M's family had opposed the hurried union with my sister. Despite their attempts to dissuade him, M had carried out the plan while in a confused and manipulated state. "And now?" I inquired, fearing the response. "Your sister won't get a divorce from him. By threatening to demand a large amount of alimony if he attempts to leave her, she has been dragging the marriage along." However, the disclosures did not end there. She informed me that my sister had told them the truth about everything a few days prior while intoxicated. She acknowledged that all they had told him about me was false and that they had trapped him. She even came clean about the essay that had been taken all those years ago. Her words, "M has been devastated since then. He'd like to speak with you. He claims that he made the most significant error of his life and is unsure of how he would ever be able to apologize. Perhaps you can speak and decide what to do next, he hopes." With my head spinning from all this new knowledge, I gazed at her. I felt somewhat vindicated because the truth had finally surfaced. However, a greater portion of me was just worn out. "Well," I answered in a stern tone. "Thank you for sharing all of this with me, but M and I are no longer a we." He decided. Regardless of their marital status, he is now my sister's husband. I refused to interfere or assist him in getting out of this situation. When I said this, she sobbed and begged me to change my mind, but I refused. Telling her, "My decision is final. I've moved on from that phase of my life. I'm unable to reopen those wounds." She texted me several times over the course of the following few days, urging me to speak with M, but I didn't reply. All of this was too much for me to handle anymore. I thought a lot about everything that had happened, including the life I had nearly committed to, the man I thought I knew who had deceived me so profoundly, and the family that had never really welcomed me. And I came to the crucial realization that I was stronger than everything. At that moment, I decided to use my experience as a springboard rather than a setback. I had been granted another opportunity to live my life as I had always desired, free from the burdens of my past. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. In order to resolve my trust difficulties and the residual pain from my family's betrayal, I began therapy. I became closer to my pals and was even more grateful for the family I had chosen for myself. And what do you know, things improved. It wasn't always easy, and on some days I felt like the hurt and rage would get the better of me, but I gradually began to recover. I can state with confidence that I'm in a better place than I've ever been after 10 months. I've taken up new interests, gotten promoted at work, and even resumed dating, albeit informally and much more cautiously. Ever since that day in the park with M's mother, I haven't heard from M or my family. I'm thankful they're no longer in my life, but occasionally I wonder what happened to them. They are responsible for the repercussions of their own acts. I want all of you out there who may be experiencing anything similar to know that things get better. You are stronger than you realize, even though it may not feel like it right now. Never allow a friend, family member, or romantic partner to make you feel less valuable than you actually are. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. This is going to be my last update on the matter. This chapter of my life is coming to an end, and I'm looking forward to many more joyful ones. Cheers to fresh starts, selected families, and the inner strength we discover when we need it most. Parents used my wedding fund for my twins' lavish celebration. So I finally cut them off, but now they're back needing my help. I, 28F, must explain everything here. I've had this rivalry with my twin sister Emily for as long as I can remember. In my case, it wasn't just between us, but I suppose that's normal for siblings. Without even recognizing it, my parents were deliberately pressuring us into it. I was just there, and they've always treated Emily like she's something unique. I'll tell you why this occurred. Emily is precisely 12 minutes my senior. You heard correctly, 12 minutes. It seems that's all it takes to be my family's golden child. Emily was their miracle baby, the one who could do no wrong, from the day we were born. I wasn't a horrible kid or anything, but she always received the credit for whatever I did. My first recollection of this partiality dates back to kindergarten. Both of us participated in the school play. I played the main part in Little Red Riding Hood and Emily got 2 lines as a flower. Emily started crying on stage during the concert after forgetting her lines. My parents missed my entire performance as they hurried to console her right away. Later that evening, they didn't even recognize my accomplishment. All they could speak about was Emily's bravery for trying. For the duration of primary school, this pattern persisted. Emily would be told, "Oh honey, you tried your best," if she received a C on an exam, but I would hardly be acknowledged if I received consecutive A's. I recall working on a science fair project about renewable energy for weeks in 4th grade. I conducted research, constructed models, and even spoke with regional environmental specialists. When I handed my parents the blue ribbon for winning first place, they hardly gave it a glance. Emily had a difficult day during volleyball practice, but that's still wonderful. Can we discuss this at a later time? After that, I stopped showing them my honors. The worst thing was that they made no effort to conceal their partiality. My dad used to make jokes at family get-togethers about how Emily was their firstborn and, despite the fact that we are twins, those 12 minutes somehow made her the older sister. "Emily is our responsible one, she looks after her younger sister," he would remark. I was standing there, listening to them reduce me to Emily's shadow and nothing more. Things started to have a significant psychological impact on me in middle school. I became quite driven to prove myself. I joined as many clubs as I could, including the student council, the debate team, and the math club. I was motivated to excel at everything, so I studied late into the night. Emily, on the other hand, coasted through, doing very little but somehow receiving more attention and recognition. One particular incident in particular sticks out. I was selected to compete in the state-level mathematics competition on behalf of our school in the 8th grade. I prepared for months, frequently studying until 2 or 3 in the morning. Emily had a recreational soccer match on the same day as the competition. In addition to not showing up to help, my parents didn't even inquire about how I was doing. All they could speak about when I brought home the trophy for second place was how Emily needed to be cheered up because her team had lost their game. With greater stakes, high school was more of the same. I was still participating in as many extracurricular activities as I could, taking all of my AP classes, and keeping my GPA at 4.0. Emily spent much of her time at parties and barely kept up a C average. She was still the fun and social one though, and I was criticized for being too competitive and serious. The discrepancy was brought to light during our senior year. Because of my academic accomplishments, I was named valedictorian, accepted on a full scholarship to a top university, and even had an article in the local newspaper. Emily enrolled at community college after barely graduating. However, my parents bemoaned Emily's failure to get into her first choice school for the whole of our graduation celebration, which was meant to be for the two of us. In their address, they made no mention of my accomplishments. The pivotal moment occurred while attending college. I continued to keep perfect grades while working part-time to support myself while attending a prestigious institution to study computer science. I would return home from every break with the hope that something had changed and that perhaps my parents had begun to see my value. Instead, it was Emily this, and Emily that. Somehow her decision to leave community college after just one semester was interpreted as a sign that she was brave enough to follow her own path. Then, in my junior year, came Thanksgiving break. Everything changed when my uncle, who had always had a slightly excessive love for alcohol, made a mistake. He disclosed that my parents hadn't even intended to have twins while he was thinking back on my mom's pregnancy. They were devastated to learn they were expecting 2 children when they had only intended to have 1. My dad, being the docile person he is, simply shrugged and said, "We'll figure it out." My mom had been concerned about how they would manage 2 babies. However, their method of figuring it out was to basically choose a favorite and focus all of their energy on her, which was of course, Emily, their cherished firstborn. In their minds, those pivotal 12 minutes were the difference. After years of wondering why they didn't care about my accomplishments, everything suddenly fell into perspective when my uncle confessed this to me when we were seated at the dinner table. It all made perfect sense. I was the afterthought and the unexpected addition, not the child they had hoped for. Something in me altered after that realization. I gave up trying to please them. I put all of my attention into creating my own life instead. I gave my all to my coursework and internships, wanting to succeed for myself, not for them. I received several job offers from prestigious tech businesses by the time I graduated. I took a job at a promising startup as a software engineer, and after 3 years, I was promoted to senior developer. Emily, meanwhile, was organizing this lavish wedding after meeting a wealthy man at a pub and having a brief flirtation. Naturally, my folks were ecstatic. They couldn't even recall the name of the company I worked for, yet they spent hours on the phone with her talking about the specifics of the wedding. My company was getting ready for an initial public offering, IPO, and my stock options were worth more than Emily's fiancé made in a year. The irony was that I was actually doing very well. They never inquired about my professional background. It was the wedding fund situation that ultimately crushed my heart. The only one who had ever treated us fairly was our grandmother. She left each of us a sizable sum of money before she died, especially for our upcoming weddings. She had been very explicit that we were to share the money evenly. She told me in private that she was aware of my parents' treatment of me and that this was her method of making sure I would have something that was exclusively mine. Naturally, though, my parents were unable to honor her last desires. Emily wanted this ridiculously lavish wedding, complete with a celebrity photographer, a fancy outfit and several locations. They chose to take from my share of the inheritance rather than urging her to cut back or asking her wealthy fiancé to contribute more. They didn't even tell me. They didn't ask. It wasn't until months after the wedding that my inebriated uncle, yes, the same one, spoke about it at another family get-together. They responded angrily when I confronted them about it. "Oh honey," my mother remarked, dismissively waving her hand, "we were going to tell you eventually. When we can, we'll reimburse you." Even worse was my father's reply. "Well, Emily needed it more. She's the conventional one getting married, and since you're so preoccupied with your work, it's unlikely that you'll even desire a lavish wedding." I felt nothing as I stood in their kitchen staring at these folks who were meant to be my parents. This deep emptiness, without any sadness or rage. They were unable to even comprehend the wrongness of what they had done. They believed that since it was for Emily, it was totally acceptable to take my inheritance without my consent. Emily had always been the focus. I returned to my flat that evening and gave my life a lot of thought. I came to see that Emily had eclipsed or completely disregarded every significant turning point, accomplishment and proud moment. My graduation from high school. They were too preoccupied in comforting Emily over her grades. Due to Emily's difficulties at community college, my college scholarship was hardly recognized. Emily was preparing for her wedding, so she disregarded my first promotion. I did something I should have done years ago when I opened my laptop. I emailed them and said, "I am aware of the wedding fund. I am aware that, without consulting me, you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding. The way you've treated me throughout my life is more important than the money. You never made an effort to conceal the reality that I was never the daughter you desired. I'm done attempting to win your affection and acceptance. I'm over being the kid you didn't want. Do not get in touch with me again unless it is to repay my money, please." I felt a tremendous weight lift off my shoulders as I pushed send, banned their numbers and deleted them from all social media. I didn't have to worry about trying to meet Emily's standards or gaining acceptance that I would never receive for the first time in my life. It has been a life-changing year. I gave my job and personal development my all attention. My stock options are now worth more than Emily's whole wedding expenses because our company's initial public offering, IPO, was a success. I started therapy to address my childhood trauma, purchased my own home in a desirable area of the city, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who genuinely respect me for who I am. Occasionally, Emily makes an effort to connect with distant family members or mutual friends. She will write things like, "Family should stick together," or "You're still my sister." But as she saw our parents discount my accomplishments throughout the years, where was this sense of family? When she joyfully received my inheritance for her wedding, where was that? She shared our parents' complicity in everything. Some relatives have attempted to place the blame on me by claiming that I'm being too severe, that blood is thicker than water, and other such things. However, these are the same individuals who silently observed my parents' years-long favoritism of Emily. They remained silent after seeing my treatment. They are no longer able to express an opinion. It's interesting because cutting them off has made me realize who my true family is. My therapist, who is helping me see that none of this was my fault. My coworkers, who applaud my accomplishments, and my college best friend, who assisted me in moving into my new home. The ones that genuinely care about me are these. I have been offered a role as team lead at the firm I work for, which recently launched a new office in a different state. I'm making a decision for the first time in my life without considering how it will compare to Emily or what my parents will say, and it's a great opportunity. It feels amazing to be living my life for myself. Am I the jerk for cutting them off entirely? Reddit? I often question whether I'm being overly dramatic, but every time I consider the possibility of getting back in touch with them, I reflect back on all the years I spent feeling inadequate, and I know I made the correct decision. It's going to get even more complicated now, though, and I need your honest thoughts on what I should do next. Update 1. 2 weeks ago, everything changed drastically. My phone began ringing with several calls from my uncle when I was in the middle of a team meeting. My initial reaction was to ignore it because family calls always indicate turmoil, but I decided to answer it because there was something unique about receiving several calls in quick succession. He began, trembling a little, "Hey, it's Uncle Greg." I knew right away that something was amiss. He is typically the type of guy that remains positive even in the face of adversity. "I need to discuss your parents with you." I felt sick to my stomach. I knew this couldn't be good news because I hadn't heard from them in 2 years. "What's happening?" Trying to speak steadily, I asked. "They were involved in an accident. A rather poor one. They are in the medical facility." He paused, and I heard him inhaling deeply. "Their car was struck by a truck that ran a red light. Your dad is in critical condition, and your mom has several fractures. They have spent a few days in the hospital." Days. I said it again, raising my voice. "And until now, no one had the idea to tell me." He said, "They wanted me to let you know," in a calmer tone. "I believe, they want to see you, I believe. That's not all though. Their insurance is having issues." There was, of course. He went on to tell me that 6 months prior, my parents had allowed their health insurance to lapse. They had been having financial difficulties due to credit card debt and poor investments. They were far from being discharged from the hospital, and the medical bills were already mounting. "What about Emily?" I knew the answer when I asked. Uncle Greg let out a sigh. "She said she couldn't assist with the bills when she visited once, immediately following the accident. She didn't want to ask her husband for money so soon after their honeymoon, for some reason. She is occupied with her stepchildren, her new family." That made me giggle. Emily is typical, always coming up with an excuse. Emily was too proud to approach her wealthy husband for assistance with our parents' medical expenditures, even though she had no trouble taking my fortune for her wedding. I sat in my office for a while after I hung up with Uncle Greg, gazing out the window at the skyline of the city. I didn't miss the irony. Now that my stock options had vested and I had more than enough money saved to pay for their medical expenses, I was truly in a position to assist them. Did I want to, though? I was unable to concentrate on anything else for the following few days. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, anticipating a call regarding their status. I couldn't stop picturing them in hospital beds, presumably wondering if I would ever arrive. Since they were my parents, I felt bad for even thinking about not helping. The years of favoritism, the stolen fortune, and the way they only contacted me now because they required something from me were all brought back to me though. Simply put, this was about money. Not about re-establishing contact or making amends. 3 days after Uncle Greg called, Emily texted me. "I am aware that you are performing well at work. Parents are in dire need of assistance. This is your opportunity to act morally. My opportunity to act morally? When she was using my inheritance to pay for her wedding, where was this moral compass? Where had she been all those years when she saw our parents brush off my accomplishments? My parents finally called themselves after a week of internal conflict. Although my mother's speech was weak and obviously influenced by painkillers, her deceptive methods remained same. As if the past 2 years of silence hadn't occurred, she began, "Sweetheart, we're in a really tough situation here. According to the specialists, the expenses might reach $200,000, not including rehabilitation. We acknowledge our shortcomings as parents, but..." I interrupted her. "No, you aren't, and you never will be. You haven't gotten in touch with me in 2 years, and the only reason is that you need money." My dad's voice said, "That's not fair." He was probably on speaker. "Your parents are us. Family supports family." That statement, "family helps family," set me off. Anger that had been bottled up for years came to the surface. "Family helps family." I said it again. When you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding, where was that feeling? When you missed my college graduation, where were you? Where did you neglect every significant event in my life because you were too preoccupied with showing your admiration for Emily? After a brief period of silence, my mother began to cry. Those recognizable, cunning tears I had heard so many times when she wanted to make me feel bad. She said, "How can you be so cruel? The hospital is where we are. Your dad may require surgery. Will you truly desert us at this point?" I inhaled deeply before uttering the words I had been wishing to say for years. "Yes, in fact. Yes, I am. All my life you emotionally abandoned me. You just thought of me as Emily's shadow and your fallback option. Now that Emily is refusing to assist, you turn to me. No, I will no longer be your last option. Starting with, 'But we're family,' my father said." "No," I cut in. "We're not. Since you determined that Emily was the only child deserving of your love, we have not been family. I'm finished. Never get in touch with me again." After hanging up, I blocked their numbers once more. I then texted Emily one last time, saying, "They're also your parents. Try it yourself." The days that followed were extremely difficult. I would always have these moments where I would doubt my choice. Was I being too severe? Despite all, should I still assist them? But every time those thoughts surfaced, I was reminded of how they had treated me throughout my life and how they had only ever contacted me when they wanted something. Yesterday, Uncle Greg gave another call. He attempted to guilt trip me by claiming that my parents required physical therapy and surgery since their health was deteriorating. He said they might lose everything and that they were discussing remortgaging their home. The problem is that I have no responsibility for their financial difficulties. They made their decisions. They decided to give Emily preference. They decided to squander the money I left them. They decided to allow their insurance to expire. They are currently dealing with the fallout from their decisions. Some may accuse me of being heartless. Perhaps I am. But I've been striving to be good enough and win their love my entire life, and I'm done. I am no longer the fallback option. When Emily refuses to take charge, I'm done being the one who has to make all the repairs. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, even though I realize this makes me seem callous. My mental well-being is more important to me than their guilt trips. My financial stability is more important to me than their shoddy preparation. Reddit. I know I previously questioned whether I was the jerk for cutting them off, but I need to know if I'm the jerk for not helping them pay their medical costs. This one even seems unclear to my therapist. While I feel bad about it, I also think that this is just another instance of them only wanting me around when they need me. And believe me, the narrative doesn't end here. The situation is going to become considerably more intricate. Update 2. My life took yet another drastic change 3 days ago. I was enjoying a peaceful evening at home after a very demanding workday during which we had completed preparations for the opening of our new office. My doorbell rang at precisely 8:07 p.m. when I was studying some project paperwork, enjoying a glass of pricey red wine, a minor luxury I now permit myself, and some classical music playing softly in the background. I hadn't ordered anything and most of my friends normally text before coming over, so I wasn't expecting anyone. I froze, staring through the peephole. Emily was standing there looking like the affluent trophy wife she had become, complete with a fashionable gown, flawless makeup, and a $15,000 Hermes Birkin purse in her hand. I was aware of the irony. That bag alone could have paid for a sizable amount of our parents' medical expenses. I briefly thought about acting as though I wasn't home, but throughout the previous few weeks, I had undergone a transformation. I was no longer the person who squirmed around Emily. She had intimidated me for too long, and I had allowed her to win. No more. I opened the door with my cool, controlled and slightly dismissive corporate boardroom demeanor. Leaning against the doorframe, I remarked, "Well, if it isn't my dear sister. What brings you to my humble abode?" Without waiting for an invitation, she swept by me and entered my apartment. Emily's usual behavior. Her gaze swept across my living area, taking in the original artwork on the walls, the contemporary furnishings, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city. I could picture her mentally listing everything, most likely contrasting it with her suburban McMansion. She said, "Nice place," in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. "Very cozy." She used the word cozy with that special emphasis that affluent people give to something they think is beneath them. "Stop wasting your time, Emily. Why have you come here?" She turned to me, adjusting her scarf, an anxious habit from childhood. "Mom and Dad are deteriorating. Mom's physical treatment isn't covered by their payment plan, and Dad needs emergency surgery for internal bleeding they missed at first. Unless they can provide proof of payment, the hospital threatens to suspend treatment. They are discussing selling the house." I saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped her fancy purse more tightly. Emily in her classic form. She was clearly preparing for something. "And that's my problem because..." I arched an eyebrow, purposefully imitating her patronizing tone from our early years. "Because you can help them," she said, her immaculate exterior beginning to falter. "I am aware that your business went public. I checked the pricing of the stocks. I conducted research. You've got the cash." That made me giggle. The sound, which was perhaps rougher than I intended, reverberated off the walls of my flat. "Oh, you have been monitoring me? How intriguing. Before using my inheritance to pay for your wedding, did you do this much research? Or prior to your own refusal to assist them? In all this, where is your wealthy husband?" Emily's face turned red, another vivid memory from my early years. Her dramatic outbursts, which always ended with our parents comforting her, were always preceded by that flush when we were little. "That's different," she stammered as her poise continued to falter. "I now have a new family. I have obligations. Consider stepchildren. We each have our own financial plans, James and I. When a family situation arises, I can't just throw money at it." "Can't just what?" With a strong voice, I interrupted her. "Can't you simply assist your parents, who have given you everything? Who paid for your wedding with my inheritance? Who prioritizes you the most? Who didn't attend my college graduation to assist you with your apartment move? Those parents." She waved her hand dismissively and said, "That's ancient history." But I saw that she stepped back. "This is roughly right now. You're being selfish, and they need help." Her use of the word selfish was the last straw. A lifetime of repressed rage and bitterness abruptly solidified into a chilly, unambiguous goal. I went silently to my home office, picked up my laptop and a few papers off my desk, and then went back to the living room. "Emily, would you like to discuss money? Let's have a conversation." I rotated the screen of my portfolio dashboard in her direction. "Look at these figures. My stock options are these. I'll explain it to you in words you can comprehend. This is more valuable than James, your husband, will be in 3 years. That home of which you're so proud. If I wanted to, I could pay cash for it tomorrow." As she gazed at the numbers, her face turned white instead of crimson. I went on, bringing up papers such as my investment portfolio, my pay stubs, and the most recent offers I had gotten from rival businesses. But you're a tech worker." For the first time I could recall, she stumbled, "You're just a programmer." Her voice was small. "Emily, I'm now a senior development director. I was making something for myself while you and your wealthy husband were playing home. I also did it without treading on anyone else, unlike you." I clicked firmly to shut down my laptop. Without using any of my resources, I could assist Mom and Dad by covering their medical expenses. However, I won't. She murmured, "You're being cruel." But I could see that she realized that her younger sister had outwitted her. "No, it is terrible to stand by and do nothing while your sister is ignored her entire life. Without asking, cruel is stealing her inheritance. Cruel only shows up at her door when you're in need." I approached the door and pulled it open. "Are we finished here? Don't return?" Clutching her pricey purse like a shield, she stood there. She made one final attempt to say, "You'll regret this," but her voice lacked the assurance it usually possessed. "When they lose everything. My only regret is that I didn't cut you all off sooner. Emily, goodbye." I poured myself another glass of wine after she left, a $200 bottle I had been putting away for a special occasion, and this one felt like it, and then I went out to my balcony. In front of me, the city lights were a tapestry of freedom and opportunity. I felt totally free for the first time in my life. No more living in Emily's shadow, no more feeling guilty, no more looking for approval. My phone was inundated with notifications the following morning. Apparently, Emily had spent the night phoning every member of the family she could get through to tell them how I had changed, how prosperity had made me callous and uncaring, and how I was leaving the family when they needed me most. Uncle Greg wrote me a very long mail on karma and family responsibilities. In response, I shared a comprehensive folder with the family group chat. It included scanned copies of my inheritance documents, bank statements that revealed how my money was used for Emily's wedding, text messages from Emily stating that she would not assist with the medical bills despite her affluent lifestyle, and a breakdown of my current net worth that showed exactly how much I could contribute if I so desired. After that, the family conversation became very silent. Our cousin Angela was the only one to reply, "Holy, you actually did it, didn't you? In fact, you were successful on your own." I worked on my future plans over the course of the following few days. In another state, I accepted the promotion, which came with a bigger package of stock options and a substantial rise. The real estate agent believes my apartment will sell for a lot more than I'm asking for in this neighborhood, so I put it up for sale. I've already begun searching for real estate in my new city. This time, perhaps a penthouse. Emily sent me one last text last night, which said, "Mom's crying every night because of you." I commented, "She had years to cry about how she treated me," and included a screenshot of my inheritance paperwork in my response. Her tears are no longer effective. After that, I blocked her number and all of my other family contacts. Closing the last chapter of a book I should have finished years ago was how it felt. You have been amazing during this journey, Reddit. Your encouragement made it clear to me that I wasn't alone in my feelings and that it's acceptable to put oneself above harmful family members. Your remarks served as a constant reminder of my decision-making process whenever I had second thoughts. Recently, I received a message questioning if achieving financial success was worth sacrificing my family. The truth is, though, that I didn't lose any. Folks who never treated me like family in the first place were folks I broke free from. My achievement just gave me the courage to refuse their treatment. It didn't change who I am. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who told me similar stories, gave me advice, or just confirmed how I felt. When I most needed strength, you gave it to me. I will begin looking for a home in my new city next week. A new life, a new career, and a new home. For the first time, I'm looking forward to the future without being constrained by obligations to my family. AITA? To some, perhaps. However, I've come to the crucial realization that sometimes being branded an asshole by toxic individuals is a sign that you're finally advocating for yourself. Reddit, thank you. I was able to discover my value and voice thanks to you. My parents always favored my adopted sister, even pushing me to combine my store opening with her graduation. This time, I got my revenge. I'm a 24-year-old male who grew up in what appeared to be a normal suburban middle-class family, but my parents' actions have caused me chronic suffering all of my life. Their entire reputation in our neighborhood was based on the fact that they were these wonderful people who, in all honesty, loved their adoptive daughter even more than their biological son. Few people are fully aware of the impact this had on me. My adoptive sister Emma, who was 3 at the time, was brought home by my parents when I was 6. Everything in my life changed on that day. I was ecstatic when my parents sat me down in our living room and discussed the possibility of adopting a sibling. Most afternoons I waited for my parents to get home from work by playing games in our backyard by myself. The children in the area were either much older or younger than me, and I had no siblings with whom to play. It seemed like the ideal answer to have a sister with whom I could share my toys and hang out during those long days. It was just what I had hoped for when Emma initially came. During those peaceful afternoons at home, we played together, had snacks, and I at last had someone to chat to. But over time, little shifts in my family's dynamics continued to accumulate. Emma became the center of my parents' attention, and they made all of their decisions with her best interests in mind. If Emma wasn't in the mood, they would postpone weekend family activities, modify dinner arrangements to suit her tastes and rearrange their schedules so that they could attend all of Emma's school functions while missing mine. I began to feel marginalized in my own household, as if my parents were losing interest in me. There is more to this narrative than just sibling rivalry, even though I am aware that some may assume I am just jealous. There was a noticeable difference between Emma's and my parents' approaches to childcare. My mom quit her 8-year accounting job to become a full-time mother within a week after Emma's arrival. In contrast to when I was born, Mom returned to work as soon as her maternity leave ended, putting me in the care of different people. I spent most of my time at my grandparents' little apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month because my parents were constantly worried about money back then and worked extra and weekend shifts. The babysitting situation was anything from perfect. Instead of truly watching me, these sitters, who were mostly high school students looking for additional money, often saw their position as an opportunity to hang out with their partners. As they sat in the living room, texting or chatting on their phones, I would spend hours by myself in my room. Sometimes, when they thought I was sleeping, their boyfriends would sneak in through the garage or climb through our rear window. My parents would terminate the present sitter after I repeatedly told them about these instances, then hire a new one who behaved similarly. During years, this cycle persisted, and I felt that no one genuinely cared about my welfare during the majority of my early years. I believed that everything would improve when Emma arrived. I took my responsibilities as a big brother seriously, even though I was only 6. I gave her access to all of my toys and even assisted her in learning the letters, as much as a 6-year-old could. It was good to have my mom at home all the time. I believed we would finally be able to do everything I saw other children doing with their mothers, such as going to the park or baking cookies. Rather, as the big brother, my mom expected me to be mature and self-sufficient while spending all of her time and energy on Emma, treating her like a princess. When my parents changed the plans for my birthday, things really started to get tricky. Emma's true birth date was unknown to the orphanage and she had been discovered abandoned at a shopping mall. After conducting a number of tests, including dental work, developmental evaluations, and physical examinations, the doctors determined that she was around 3 years old at the time of her discovery. My parents decided that Emma should share my birthday rather than keeping the date she was given at the orphanage or picking any other day of the year. They portrayed this concept as though it were a unique privilege for me. I began to notice small differences every year, but those early combined birthday celebrations were tolerable. Even though I continued to get gifts and eat some cake, Emma started to dominate the gatherings. Family, friends, and relatives would show up with twice as many presents for her, gushing about how wonderful it was that we celebrated together and hardly seeing me. Emma's backstory appeared to captivate everyone, who treated her more like a queen than a mere child. As everyone gathered around Emma to listen to her recount the same adoption tale they had heard dozens of times before, I sat there, silently opening my gifts, trying not to feel invisible at my own birthday celebration. I still find it annoying that my parents had Emma share my birthday. She was already officially given a date by the orphanage, the day she was discovered. We could have chosen any day that may have been Emma's special day, such as my aunt's birthday in September or my grandparents' anniversary in March. However, my parents purposely picked my birth date because they thought it would help Emma feel more a part of the family. The one special day of the year when they are the focus of attention for the majority of children is their birthday. However, my parents used this innocent youthful delight as just another reminder that Emma's needs came first. They concluded this choice with sentimental platitudes about sharing and family ties, which prevented a 6-year-old from expressing dissatisfaction without feeling self-centered. The only person who appeared to realize something was off was my uncle. During that first joint party, he drew me away to ask if I truly felt comfortable with everything. By the time I was 10, I no longer celebrated birthdays but loathed them. Emma was in charge of every step of our combined celebrations, from picking princess themes that made me feel uncomfortable at my own party to selecting a cake that I didn't even enjoy. The issue with the guest list was especially unfair because I was only allowed to invite 5 of my friends, but Emma would bring 20 or more from her different activities to our home. Because of this rule, I had to pick my friends carefully every year, which occasionally strained my bonds with those who were unable to go. After I was unable to invite my best buddy to my 11th birthday, we stopped communicating for weeks. When I wanted to invite a 6th buddy one year, the inequity of these parties became even more apparent. My parents denied the request right away, claiming that our home could already host as many people as possible. Emma's pals and their mothers, who needed to supervise their daughters at all times, were able to find space nonetheless. My parents used their go-to justification that girls require extra supervision to brush off my worries when I brought up the fact that my pals arrived alone. Emma's friends and their mothers, meanwhile, occupied our entire living room and treated me like a guest at what should have been my birthday. On multiple occasions, I plucked up the nerve to propose holding separate parties. Every time I tried, my parents would cut me off with prepared answers about Emma's challenging past. They would bring up her terrible beginning in life for the 100th time, utterly disregarding the fact that they were making a difficult present for me by consistently denying my feelings, or they would tell me that she didn't know her true birthday, as if that somehow justified taking over mine. I always felt bad about bringing up the topic in these chats, as if I were being selfish for wanting a day to myself. I eventually gave up arguing over my birthday. In what had become Emma's special day, featuring her brother, I learned to put on a smile and play my part. The pain persisted. It simply became a recurring emotion on each birthday. Emma unwrapped twice as many presents than I did during these parties, and I would sit silently in the corner and try to look joyful while family members swooned over her and hardly acknowledged me. Finding my passion for making things with my hands was the one silver lining in all of this. Making a pencil holder out of an empty cereal box one dull afternoon was the beginning. Before long, I was turning a variety of everyday objects into works of art. Bins of gathered materials, such as broken jewelry, plastic bottles, and old newspapers, anything I could repurpose, filled our garage, which became my go-to spot. I watched do-it-yourself videos for hours on end, learning new ways to make everything from elaborate jewelry to gorgeous wall hangings. My works, which were solely mine and which Emma was unable to share or take over, gradually filled my room. By my early 20s, what began as a therapeutic pastime in my teens had developed into a lucrative internet business. I worked a day job at a local coffee shop and spent many hours improving product images, writing descriptions, and running my online store. Social media users began taking notice of my handcrafted goods, and soon I had loyal clients from all across the nation. With cabinets brimming with supplies, and a special shipping station in what should have been my dining room, my tiny apartment was transformed into a workshop. My funds ultimately allowed me to create my own physical store after 3 years of meticulous financial planning, working overtime, and reinvesting nearly every penny of earnings. I discovered the ideal location, a former boutique with exposed brick walls and lots of windows in a bustling shopping area. 2 months ago I signed the lease, and in my free time, I designed exhibits, planned the store layout, and planned a grand opening event. This was meant to be my chance to shine, to prove to everyone that the boy who sat in the corner on his birthdays had accomplished something meaningful. I even engaged a local photographer to capture the entire occasion. My folks reacted in a predictable way when I told them about the store opening. After 5 minutes or so of their seeming excitement, my mother revealed that Emma was graduating from college at the same time. They suggested that we combine the opening party with Emma's graduation celebration before I had even finished outlining my preparations. My dad nodded as though this was the most sensible notion ever, and my mom remarked, "Think about it, we can invite everyone once instead of making them come to 2 separate events." The irony of attempting to combine my milestone with Emma's once more went unnoticed by them. I declined right away, stating that I wanted my accomplishment to be the main focus of this celebration. When I resisted, my parents seemed surprised, as if they didn't understand why I wouldn't want to share this moment with them. Using their tried and true guilt-tripping strategies of making things easy for everyone, they persisted in pressuring me, accusing me of being selfish and challenging. They used the same expressions they had used when I was a child. "It's only one day, and why can't you be more understanding?" But this time was different. I had worked alone for years to establish this business, staying up late to fulfill orders, interacting with challenging clients, and learning every aspect of business management by making mistakes. I firmly said that this event would exclusively be about the debut of my store. They were no longer successful in making me feel bad. My parents became irate and said they might not attend the opening at all when they saw that I wasn't going to back down. I told them that was their decision for the first time in my life. I was left feeling bewildered and frustrated by the entire event. Instead of being proud and encouraging, they were attempting to minimize my achievement by making it about Emma once more. Here I was, their kid, accomplishing something important all by myself. They didn't think I deserved a celebration of my own, even though I was an adult with my own company. I was no longer a 6-year-old who could be persuaded to share his wonderful day, but the same patterns from my early years were reoccurring. Regardless of who came to celebrate, I made the decision that my store opening would be my time alone. Update 1. I got hundreds of answers after venting my unhappiness online, but one message in particular truly resonated with me. My parents had unwittingly given me the ideal opportunity for retaliation, someone pointed out. The more I considered it, the more obvious it became. A college graduation would inevitably be eclipsed by the opening of my business, especially when I could give everyone first dibs on my merchandise. Directly beneficial things always pique people's curiosity more. I agreed to my parents' proposal in a message rather than continuing to oppose the combined celebration. I informed them that I had changed my mind and that I believed they were correct to gather everyone for a single, large celebration. My parents were ecstatic at my seeming change of heart, likely believing that their guilt trips had won me over once more. I continued to be cooperative throughout all of the planning sessions, nodding in agreement as they talked about food possibilities and decoration ideas. As I had anticipated, my parents took full charge of organizing the celebration. They planned the catering, made arrangements with all of our family members and guests, and reserved a pricey location, all in keeping with Emma's graduation theme. Every choice, including the color scheme and the kind of music to be played, was created with Emma's preferences in mind. The invitation card served as the last piece of evidence that I had made the proper choice. The phrase celebrating Emma's graduation was printed across the top of these ornate, gold-bordered cards. Nowhere, not even in the small print at the bottom, was my store announcement mentioned. This was exactly what I had planned, but my parents undoubtedly believed I would be unhappy. Everyone in attendance would be completely taken aback by my revelation because they were all focused on Emma's accomplishment. During those weeks, I worked quietly to finish the details of my store debut and prepare my own contents. My parents had invited almost everyone, so the party location was just what you would anticipate. I couldn't have timed my announcement more perfectly. The bartender noticed me and gave me a fresh glass of champagne just after all the remarks but before the cake cutting. As I got up, everyone's eyes were on me, presumably anticipating another homage to Emma. While my parents were busy welcoming guests, I worked with the venue personnel to create my promotional materials earlier. I didn't need sentimental appeals or flowery wording, my declaration was direct. I just said that next month, after years of developing my online business, I will establish my first physical location. Groups gathered around me in a matter of minutes as people inquired about the store's location, the goods I would be carrying, and the exclusive deals I would be providing to friends and relatives. My aunt was now showing everyone photos of my products on her phone after she had just completed speaking about Emma's academic accomplishments. There was a noticeable difference between my parents' private and public responses. As family members congratulated me, they forced smiles and nodded in agreement, maintaining their typical flawless demeanor in front of the guests throughout the evening. However, I could sense the stress in their body language, my dad's jaw tightening whenever someone brought up my store, and my mom's hands trembling a little while she served cake. Emma disappeared from her own graduation celebration shortly after her champagne toast failed, and hardly anyone listened to her rehearsed speech about her time in college. My mom's facade eventually broke when the last relative left and the caterers started to clear up. The mom, who had taught me to share the spotlight for years, confronted me and accused me of spoiling her daughter's graduation celebration. Calmly, I stated my stance, stating that I had just announced my business as scheduled and that this joint celebration was their idea, not mine. My father's response demonstrated the extent of their partiality. He jumped right to blaming me of jealousy rather than admitting that they had been treated unfairly for years. I had seen this trend since I was a little child. Any attempt to assert my own space was viewed as selfish or envious. After 20 years of holding back, I finally said it. I detailed every celebration, birthday, and moment that had been appropriated and turned into Emma's unique time. For once, I was just expressing the facts about their behavior pattern and wasn't requesting sympathy or compassion. My parents resorted to their standard defensive tactic, making the same claims they had made all through my early years. They brought up Emma's terrible beginning, her desertion, and the fact that she didn't know her biological family, which made her need further help. These were the same excuses I'd heard at every family get-together, school function, and birthday where my needs had been neglected. However, I didn't feel bad about what they said this time. I had worked with my therapist for years to process these emotions, realizing that their actions were motivated by their desire to be viewed as saviors rather than Emma's needs. We were all unaware that Emma had come back to the location and was waiting in the doorway when we confronted her. Putting on the dramatic show that had always worked so well for her, she rushed into the room with mascara streaming down her face. She blamed me, saying that I was envious of her position in the family and had always detested her. In actuality, I had spent my early years attempting to be the ideal big brother, giving up my personal space and festivities, all the while being informed that it was never enough. Instead of being the recipient of our parents' unrelenting favoritism, she was now behaving as though she had been the target of my anger. The days after the celebration demonstrated how ingrained my parents' partiality was. They concentrated only on Emma's injured feelings, ignoring the ways in which their actions had exacerbated the problem. They contacted me over and over again, requesting not just an apology, but also that I pay for Emma's vacation so she could get over the stress. Their request was quite ridiculous. They wanted me to pay Emma thousands of dollars only because people were genuinely interested in my business success rather than Emma's graduation. They demanded that I give them my hard-earned money so they could pay for Emma's vacation after she felt overshadowed at one party. My answer to their demands was straightforward. I left. I was done playing their game after years of attempting to be understanding and accommodating. My parents appeared surprised that, unlike so many times in the past, I wouldn't give in and apologize right away. Their trump card had usually been Emma's tears, but they weren't working this time. Nothing would ever change, as evidenced by their inability to recognize the hypocrisy. Emma was furious over sharing attention at one occasion, But I had been forced to share or give up the spotlight at every celebration for 20 years. I had already attempted to discuss these matters with my family. I made several attempts to discuss my parents' partiality with them during my late teens and early 20s. I tried a variety of strategies, including polite conversations at family dinners, long emails outlining my emotions, and even suggested family therapy. The identical response was given to each attempt. Emma had a difficult start in life. This expression became their go-to justification for anything I said that hurt or irritated them. When I was 19, I sobbed as I talked about how lonely I felt at my own birthday parties during a particularly trying conversation. All my mother could do was remind me of Emma's desertion. I eventually came to terms with the fact that my parents couldn't see their own actions clearly after years of this habit. At the age of 21, I left their home and rented a modest apartment across town with the first earnings from my internet business. Our relationship has grown more surface level ever since. We occasionally visit one another at family get-togethers, send each other birthday greetings, and share significant life events, but there is no longer any genuine connection. No in-depth discussions or emotional exchanges. I've stopped expecting them to change or see things my way, but they still don't understand why I've separated myself and continue to blame me for not being more understanding of Emma's needs. Update 2. My parents surprised me with an even more absurd demand just when I thought they had had enough of the commotion surrounding the graduation party. They unexpectedly showed up at my flat prior to the big opening of my store. They sat uneasily on my couch at first, acting casual as they inquired about the store's preparations. However, they then disclosed their true motivation for coming. They wanted me to appoint Emma as the store manager. Their argument was that she shouldn't have to go through the typical job search process like everyone else because she had a college degree. They seemed to believe that I had a duty to give Emma a ready-made job because I had worked so hard to develop this company over the years. When my parents enumerated Emma's qualifications for running my store, the conversation swiftly turned bizarre. My dad claims that her primary qualifications were that she was pretty, smart, and had a general business degree, as if being physically attractive had anything to do with managing a retail establishment. I had studied customer service, inventory control, and company operations for years, but it seems that Emma's beauty outweighed all of that knowledge. My mom didn't hesitate to suggest that Emma should also cut the ribbon during the store opening when I mockingly inquired if they wanted me to do anything more for their precious daughter. What was she thinking? Emma might feel less important at the graduation celebration, but it would make up for it. They believed Emma deserved more publicity, therefore they wanted me to give a management position in my company to someone who had no retail expertise and allow her to serve as the face of my store opening. However, this was no longer about birthday celebrations or toy swapping. This was my source of income, my career accomplishment, and something I had created on my own without their assistance. They reacted to my rejection in the same way they had always done. By manipulating my emotions. The guilt trips came first, followed by charges of selfishness and threats. With the same firmness that she had used to make me share my birthdays, my mom offered them an ultimatum. Either I give Emma what she wanted, or they wouldn't come to the store opening. Emma's arrogant expression as they threatened me informed me that she expected me to comply, just as I always did. They were all startled when I instructed them not to come at all and agreed to their requirements instead. Even without my immediate family present, the store opening surpassed all of my expectations. The room was crowded with my extended family, devoted clients from my internet business, and encouraging friends. I told my family members the truth without feeling ashamed or sorry when they nervously inquired about my parents' absence. Some expressed sympathy, while others were uneasy, but I didn't care about controlling other people's emotions in relation to my family's circumstances. After opening for several months, my store is doing quite well. Expecting me to come apologizing like I had so many times before, my parents tried their customary silent treatment, but now their silence is peaceful instead of terrible. To fit their idea of the ideal family, I no longer feel the need to shrink myself.